Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Education, the most studious committee in the Nevada State Legislature. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members De Silva, Dahlia, DeLong, Flanagan, Hanson, Hardy, Hunt, Koenig, LaRue Hatch, Mosca, Orntlicker, and Chair Torres Fawcett.
Thank you. And please mark Assemblymember Flanagan absent, excuse, and present if she does arrive. Welcome to the audience here in Carson City, those joining us by video conference, and those joining us in Las Vegas and listening over the internet. If you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so as soon as possible. You don't want to miss our important updates. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. Please remember to silence your electronic devices, including laptops and cell phones. If you wish to testify, please make sure that you sign in at the door with our committee staff and leave your business card if you do have one. For those joining us online, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize background noise. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name, spell your name, and state your affiliation, if any, for the record. Then turn the microphone off each time you are done speaking. Handout should have been provided to my committee staff. I would ask that in the future we please make sure amendments are sent in only once they are finalized, so it makes it easier for my committee staff. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting if we do not agree with another person's position. I know we're going to discuss a number of challenging and critical conversations today, and so respect is always an expectation, and failure to do so may cause us to stop your comments and move on to the next speaker, so please be wary of that. Public comment will also be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. At this time, we're going to go ahead and do work session first. I am also going to go ahead and go over the agenda for today. So the first bill that we will be hearing after the work session today will be AB 533, and then we will move on to AB 335. Then we'll move on to AB 494, and we will conclude with AB 465. So just so members are aware, that's the order for the bills today. I know that we are going pretty out of order today, so I just want to make sure that the public knows that's going to be the order. If you're here for a bill that's later in the agenda, you might choose not to be in this room and wait the whole time, or you can feel free to join us through what I know is going to be a fun, busy, stacked day here in the legislature. At this time, we'll go ahead and open the work session. I'll go ahead and pass it to Ms. Lower for AB 49.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly Lower, Committee Policy Analyst. As a reminder, as nonpartisan staff, I may neither support nor oppose any measure before the committee. The first measure on work session is Assembly Bill 49, which revises provisions relating to educational personnel. The Washoe County School District proposed an amendment which removes the requirement for the Commission to maintain a list of states with similar licensing requirements for school professionals as those of Nevada. Additionally, the amendment removes the requirement that a teacher licensed in another state to receive a provisional license in Nevada, the other states for a teacher to license in another state to receive a provisional license in Nevada. The other states' licensure requirements must be substantially similar to Nevada's. The amendment clarifies that the Board of Trustees of a school district may employ a teacher for up to 1 year if they have an out-of-date license and applied for a Nevada license. Removes the provision authorizing a person to simultaneously enroll in multiple programs for alternative licensure, removes the requirement that the Commission provide qualifications for the receipt of a secondary license without an applicant satisfying additional requirements for repeating requirements when the applicant holds a license to teach middle school or junior high education or secondary education and applies for a license to teach elementary education, adds language authorizing the employment of a person by a public school in a position to provide support or services relating to school counseling if that person does not hold a license or endorsement as a school counselor but is enrolled in a program to obtain such a license or endorsement, authorizes a person who holds a valid license as a registered nurse issued by the State Board of Nursing and has applied for an endorsement as a school nurse, but the endorsement has not been issued to serve as a school nurse. Authorizes a person who holds a valid license as a social worker issued by the Board of Examiners for social workers and has applied for an endorsement as a school social worker, but the endorsement has not been issued to serve as a school social worker. Clarifies that the amount of the fee waiver when converting a substitute license to a full teaching license is to offset the costs already incurred by the applicant, and repeals Nevada Revised Statutes 391.027, which relates to the State Board of Education's ability to disapprove any regulation adopted by the Commission.
Thank you. Members, do I have any questions about the amendment? Doesn't appear that there are any, so at this time I'll accept a motion to amend and do pass. I have the motion from Assemblymember Mosca. Do I have a second? I have the second from Assemblymember LaRue Hatch. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? This motion does pass unanimously with one member absent. And I will assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Dahlia. We'll go ahead and move on at this time to AB 184.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly Lower, Committee Policy Analyst. The next measure on work session is Assembly Bill 184, which provides provisions relating to interscholastic activities. The committee heard this bill on February 20th. Assemblymember Anderson proposed an amendment for this bill, which adds several co-sponsors and adds a provision in Section 4 specifying that a waiver of any period of ineligibility sought by a transferring pupil shall be deemed approved if no action is taken by the NIAA, the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association, within 30 days of applying for such a waiver. The amendment strikes language that requires the NIAA to approve a request for a waiver of ineligibility for a transferring pupil if the circumstances leading to the pupil's transfer are beyond the normal control of a pupil, parent, or legal guardian and are not related to the pupil's participation in a sanctioned sport or other interscholastic activity or the result of athletic recruitment. The amendment adds language requiring the NIAA to issue such a waiver if the school or school district has issued a notice informing the public that the pupil attends is closing permanently or will be closed for renovations or repairs. Changes references to the state school board to the school district relating to repealing a decision of the NIAA and requires the NIAA to hold public hearings and promulgate regulations when contemplating conference realignments.
Members, are there any questions regarding this amendment? Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just had a question on Section 3, Subsection 4. In the hearing, we had discussed that subsection maybe just wasn't worded correctly or wasn't appropriately included, and I know the sponsor of the bill had an intention to fix that or remove that. And so I know she's here. I just wondered if that's intended to be included in this amendment that we're voting on.
I'll go ahead and pass that to the bill sponsor, Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. And this is Assemblymember Natha Anderson. Through the Chair to Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, there had been some discussion. We were not able to find some strong language at this time. And so the plan is, what I'm planning on doing at this time is to continue to discuss it. So if it is fortunate enough to get through today's committee and then also off the floor, to be able to try to bring forward some language in the Senate hearing to really get that a little bit stronger, because it does feel a little bit odd that this is the only place that is kind of mentioned. So.
Chair, can I just clarify? So then was the intention to then just remove sub 4 for now as part of this amendment? Is that what we're voting on, is without sub 4?
Through the Chair to Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, I would be fine if this was amended out for today's meeting, and then also when it comes to the floor of the Assembly, and then hopefully be able to bring forward some more robust, a stronger list or more information around this very topic. So this way it's a little bit clearer as to how it's being utilized. If that makes sense, I hope. So in other words,
Give me one moment, please.
please.
Okay, thank you. So in the amendment that we have in front of us, That is on page 3 of the amendment in the work session document that members have in front of them. So we would be removing sub 4, which is lines 19 through 24. So with that, is there any further discussion on the amendment? Then I will accept a motion to amend and do pass, including the removal with the items listed in our work session document and the removal of section 3 sub 4. Do I have that motion? I have the motion from Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, and I do have the second from from Vice Chair De Silva. Is there any discussion? It doesn't appear that there is any. So we will go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. This motion does carry and pass unanimously with Assemblymember Flanagan absent excused. So I will go ahead and assign this floor statement to Assemblymember Anderson. Thank you. And we will go ahead and move on to AB 289.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly Lower, Committee Policy Analyst. The next measure on work session is Assembly Bill 289, which revises provisions relating to education. The committee heard this bill on March 11th. Assembly Bill 289 has one amendment from Assemblymember Nguyen, which proposes to change this bill, adding that the Board of Regents may establish a course in financial literacy for which an undergraduate degree-seeking student of a Nevada System of Higher Education institution may enroll as a general education or elective requirement in a program of study.
Members, are there any questions regarding the amendment? It doesn't appear that there are any. At this time, I'll take a motion to amend and do pass. I have the motion from Assemblymember Mosca. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assemblymember Dahlia. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. I have, this motion does pass, and I have just, if the opposition, could you please raise your hand? Is it just Assemblymember DeLong? Thank you. And then Assemblymember Flanagan is absent excused. We'll go ahead and continue on. Oh, I apologize. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblymember Nguyen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next measure on work session is Assembly Bill 389, which revises provisions relating to education. This bill was heard on March 20th. Assembly Bill 389 has two amendments. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett proposed an amendment for this bill, which adds provisions authorizing the Superintendent of Public Instruction to deduct the costs incurred by NDE to collect, validate, and maintain electronic records of individual pupils as necessary to report on pupil achievement and financial accountability from each school district, charter school, or university school's pupil-centered funding plan portion. Further, the amendment reassigns all the duties originally recommended to the Commission on School Funding in Section 4 of the bill to the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education, or CIEE, and adds a deadline of September 30 for each year of the 2025-2026 interim by which reporting recommendations required in Section 4 of the bill must be transmitted to the Governor and the Legislature. Nevada's Department of Education proposed an additional amendment to Section 4, subsection 1, paragraph A, clarifying that the NDE will collaborate with the CIEE to gather stakeholder input to determine which data and data collection methods relating to pupil achievement and financial accountability are most measurable and informative for assessing and improving educational programs and priorities in the state.
Members, are there any questions in regards to the amendment? I did have one piece of clarification. I'm just going to fix it to this amendment. I noticed that it says right now at a deadline of September 30th for each year of the 25-26 interim. It should just say September 30th, 2026. We don't need the report for 2025. So we'll go ahead and just correct that. Are there any other questions in regard to the amendment? Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify when it says that we will allow the Superintendent of Public Instruction to deduct costs incurred by NDE. Is that the cost for purchasing Infinite Campus or whatever the universal system will be?
Yes, that is correct. At this time, I don't see any further discussion. At this time, I'll accept a motion to amend and do pass. I have the motion from Assemblymember Mosca. Do I have a second? I have the second from Assemblymember Hunt. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. This motion does, any opposed? This motion does pass unanimously. I saw one head turn. I was ready. So I'll go ahead and assign this floor statement to myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly Lower, Committee Policy Analyst. The last measure on work session is Assembly Bill 394, which authorizes the Board of Regents and the University of Nevada to require certain institutions to adopt emergency response plans related to opioid overdoses. The committee heard this bill on March 20th. Assemblymember Brown May proposed an amendment changing the language in Section 1 regarding the dosage of naloxone hydrochloride from 4 milligrams to lowest effective dose to restore breathing. Further, the amendment adds a section to the bill prohibiting disciplinary actions against students at an Nevada System of Higher Education institution for obtaining an opioid antagonist.
Members, are there any questions on the amendment? At this time, I will accept a motion to amend and to pass. I have the motion from Vice Chair De Silva. Do I have a second? I have the second from Assemblymember Hanson. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? This motion does carry and pass unanimously with Assemblymember Flanagan absent excused. And I will assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Brown May. And this does conclude our work session for today. I expect for us to have another work session this upcoming Thursday. And just so committee knows, we'll do our best to get our work session document out to you tomorrow. Just know that now that we're approaching a deadline, those work session documents might be coming out later than normal. At this time, we'll go ahead and take a 1-minute recess.
I will now open the hearing on AB 533, which revises provisions relating to governmental administration. To present this measure, we have Chair Torres Fawcett.
That's wrong.
Oh, sorry.
It's revises provisions relating to education, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me edit that. The bill revises provisions relating to education. And Chair, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's just turned afternoon. Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the most studious Committee on Education. I'm Assembly Member Selena Torres-Fasa, and I'm excited to be here today to present AB 533, which revises provisions relating to education. More specifically, this bill establishes an open enrollment policy, allowing public school students the opportunity to apply to a public school outside where they are zoned for under certain circumstances. This bill presents an incredible opportunity to ensure that more kids have more resources to access an education that meets their needs and gives them their best chance at a bright, thriving future. Additionally, this is empowering families to make the decision that is best for their student and for their family. AB 533 gives families the agency in their students' educational experience while directly remedying long-term systemic issues stemming from a student's address being a sole deciding factor in where they go to school. Since the New Deal era in the 1930s, school zoning has been shaped by redlining maps, which are heavily segregated areas based on race. And we know that this continues to have an impact on students today. Even today, current school boundaries align with these maps that lead to a persistent and oftentimes growing disparities in racial composition, school resources, and academic achievement. Having been a product of an urban school district in Southern Nevada and being an educator in Southern Nevada, I have seen the impact of this firsthand. Schools in more affluent areas have higher home values, and they see high school and college graduation rates that are significantly higher than those in areas with higher concentrations of poverty. According to the 2020 census, the median home value in North Las Vegas was $411,000, with a high school graduation or higher among adults at 85.5%, and those with a bachelor's degree or higher is 20.4%. Comparatively, the city of Henderson's median home value was $493,000, with a high school graduation of higher among adults at 93.5%, and those with a bachelor's degree or higher at 38.6%. With that, you can see the differences and the disparities in education and income in our communities. As you can see in this map in front of you, the darker red indicates the concentration of students in low-performing elementary schools in Clark County. These elementary schools are primarily located in areas with higher concentrations of poverty and in areas where the primary populations identify as people of color. Open enrollment is a significant opportunity to level the playing field for thousands of students throughout Nevada. When I look at this map, what I recognize is that, this is maybe a map of Las Vegas, but this is something that we see consistently in Northern Nevada and in other districts throughout the nation. We have to do something different. What we're doing is not working, and we're continuing to force kids and families to go into schools where, without empowering them to make the decision that they need to do what is best for them and for their student. We'll go ahead and walk through the bill and its provisions, but in broad strokes, families would be able to apply for the public school of their choice, similar to the existing way that a family might apply for a magnet or CTA program or a public charter school. Students enrolled at the school would have priority selection. So if you live in that area, you would have the priority to go to that school in your area. And following that, a lottery would be held to equitably fill any available seats. Students would have a guaranteed seat in their school or right. So there would be no student that's denied. If the student already lives in that area, they would be going to that school. But what it would allow for families to do would be to apply to other schools where there might be open seats. And if there are available seats, as determined by the term capacity in the amended language, then the student would be able to go there. It's important to note that this is not simply the expansion of the existing change of school assignment or COSA process at Clark County School District or the School of Choice program in Washoe County School District. It provides more transparent, data-driven, equitable pathway for kids to access more opportunities for high-quality education that meets their needs. We are proud to have Yes Every Kid, a national organization that supports strengthening open enrollment process, here today to review the history of why the policy, strength of the policy in other states in the region, and why it works and what makes this a strong open enrollment policy. At this time, I'm excited to introduce Ms. Hallie Faulkner, the Senior Legislative Drafter for Yes Every Kid. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll do this quickly, but part of my job on the policy team at Yes Every Kid is to study open enrollment policies across the country. And so I'm thrilled to be here today to talk a little bit about open enrollment across the country and also here in Nevada. So, as you all know, last year, 2024, was the 70th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision, which found that separate schools for students of different races are unconstitutional. And as you also all know, despite that finding by the Supreme Court, school district boundaries are unfortunately incredibly divisive still today along the lines of both family income and race and socioeconomic status. Unfortunately, as you'll see on the next slide, school districts' boundaries continue to be just as divisive today as they were when the Brown versus Board decision was decided. You'll see just a couple examples here of districts across the country that even hire investigators to investigate families who they think are crossing school district lines and really strengthen and solidify school district boundaries rather than making them more permeable and making more school districts accessible for more families. If you keep going, Anthony, thank you. Open enrollment is a policy that essentially creates more equity and opportunities for families in every state by allowing students to enroll in any public school regardless of where they live. Just like you might bring your kiddos or grandkids to a public pool or a public library that's in your state because it's public, we believe that public schools should be open to all families statewide in the same way. If you look at open enrollment across the country, you'll find that in 1988, Arizona created the nation's first open enrollment law. Arizona continues to be a leader nationally in strong open enrollment policy. They have over 100,000 kiddos who use open enrollment each year. And this map shows the relative strength of open enrollment laws across the country. So the darker the state, the stronger the open enrollment policy, and the lighter the state, the weaker the open enrollment policy as compared with the other states. And you might be asking, what makes a strong open enrollment policy? And there are kind of 5 traits here of strong open enrollment policies that empower families. Number 1, they're universal, they're open to all kids, all schools are required to participate. They're transparent, so there's lots of clear data and reporting at the district and the school level. Parental appeals are allowed if a parent disagrees with a decision about open enrollment. All schools are free, tuition free for all kiddos in the state. And finally, there's no address discrimination. And I'm excited to say that the bill as amended that you're considering today does include all 5 of these qualities that make a really strong open enrollment program. Finally here, you might be curious what your neighboring states are doing. As I mentioned, Arizona is really a leader in open enrollment, as is Colorado. There are, again, over 100,000 kids in Colorado using open enrollment each year. And then also New Mexico and Oregon, two more blue states, both introduced strong open enrollment legislation during this current legislative session, which we are excited to see. Finally, I want to briefly touch on the ways in which open enrollment increases equity within an education system. So number 1, what we see across the board, especially in states like Arizona, Florida, Wisconsin, that have longer open enrollment programs, is families use open enrollment generally to attend higher rated schools. So if you have, the STAR rating system or the A through F rating system, we generally see that families use open enrollment to move from, let's say, a D school to a B school or a C school to an A school. We also see that there are large numbers of lower income families that are using open enrollment to access schools that they might not be able to afford, essentially, in more affluent neighborhoods than the neighborhoods in which they live. And finally, the kind of longitudinal studies on open enrollment also show that students who use open enrollment to attend a public school that they're not zoned to generally have really impressive outcomes compared to their peers who don't get in through open enrollment. So higher graduation rates, higher academic outcomes, higher rates of college attendance, etc. And I will wrap up here by going back to Arizona for one moment because it's the longest running open enrollment program in the country, and share that in Arizona, what we see is increased student performance for both more affluent students and lower income students, which is pretty rare for a state, right? Like it's kind of rare to see that upward trajectory in educational outcomes for all income levels of families. And I think a big part of that is because of just the strength of their open enrollment program and the fact that they really let families choose the public school that works best for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I will go ahead and invite a couple students to share why this bill will make a difference on their education. So first student I'll introduce is Miss Alyssa Martinez.
Good morning, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the committee. My name is Elisa Martinez, and I am a sophomore at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I am here today to speak about the importance of access to consistent, supportive educational environments. I would not be where I am today without the opportunity to remain at the high school I attended. I attended Palo Verde High School for my freshman, sophomore, and junior year. The summer before my senior year, my zone variance was denied, and I was informed that I would need to transfer to a different high school. Unfortunately, that new high school did not offer the programs that had been central to my development throughout high school, such as speech and debate and AP Japanese. I was also the founding member of the first Latino student union at Palo Verde High School. I built my college applications based on the student I was at my high school, and starting over at a new high school meant I had to change everything, in addition to adapting to a new environment. We spoke to my principal and superintendent from my school, and they stated that there was nothing they could do. They recommended that I apply for a change of school assignment. The faculty at Palo Verde High School advocated for me since I was a good student and very active in my school. My parents spent countless hours during the summer trying to find a solution of what to do. We were told that they could only give you updates once you were placed into a new school, and placements can happen even weeks after the start of the new school year. Families are left in limbo, waiting with no way to follow up or plan for the new school year. This took a mental toll on me as a student, and not knowing if I was going back to finish high school with my friends and teachers. After making many calls, my parents were told that they were working on placing me into Green Valley High School, which meant a 25-mile commute each way every day. My mom had to make the sacrifice to move so I could stay at Palo Verde. If I had been forced to transfer during my final year, I would have had to start over academically and socially. This would have meant losing the relationships I had built with my teachers and peers, and disconnecting from the programs that had encouraged my academic success and leadership development. The opportunities I had access at the Palo Verde High School were instrumental in shaping my path in my career. They allowed me to grow as a student, a leader, and an engaged community member. Without that community and support, I may not be standing here today pursuing higher education or advocating for students like myself. I am sharing my story to emphasize how important it is that students can attend schools that meet their needs and support their growth. Every student deserves access to educational environments that grow their academic and personal success. Thank you.
Thank you. The next student I will invite is Mr. Justin Sosa.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the committee. My name is Justin Sosa, and I'm a senior in high school. As a high school student, I saw firsthand the difference between attending a zone school versus having the opportunity to attend a school that fit my learning needs and my goals for the future. When I was preparing for high school, I knew I didn't want to attend my zone school. I had seen the challenges many other students dealt with and faced there, and I wanted a better opportunity. That's why I applied to Southeast Career and Technical Academy, or known as SECTA. The teachers were supportive, the students were motivated, and I finally felt like I belonged. My vision to pursue medicine allowed for me to have this burning passion, which the school let flourish. We had many clinical practices, which let my skills be put to use, great teachings and figures. This allowed me to have a set plan for post-graduation. But then everything changed. Due to my family circumstances, I had to leave SECTA and go back to my zone school, the very school I had tried so hard to avoid because I knew it wasn't the best for me. It was not possible for me to go back to SECTA, but I was also limited in my choices on where I was able to attend, which is how I would end up back in my zone school. As the school year continued, I felt all the support I had from teachers and faculty wasn't accessible, and resources were limited. I fell behind with my grades, My attendance became poor, and overall I lost passion. We knew I couldn't stay in a situation where I was struggling to learn. My family and I made a dramatic change. I left the traditional classroom and entirely switched to online school. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. It was the right choice for me. I was finally able to focus and regain control of my education and get back on track. Now I'm on track to graduate and will May 2025. I'm sharing my story today because I know many students face the same challenges. As a student, I truly believe that every student should have the choice to attend a school that best fits their needs without zoning barriers. I hope you'll consider how important it is to provide students with these choices, ones that can truly change their futures. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good job. All right, at this time, thank you to the students for sharing their story about why open enrollment could make an impact on students in our community. At this time, I'm going to walk through some key provisions of the bill. Section 1 clarifies that the Board of Trustees of a school district may choose to not provide transportation for people who elects to attend a school outside the zone of attendance. Note that we do have a proposed amendment that would study and in the future address potential transportation needs that arise from open enrollment. I'll detail that amendment at the end of this section. Section 2 specifies the policy itself, permitting pupils to attend a public school outside their designated attendance zone when there is available capacity. Subsection 3 of Section 2 describes the process by which pupils may apply to attend a school outside of their zone of attendance. The superintendent of public instruction is directed to create an application process where pupils can apply to transfer, including an annual deadline for applications and procedures to notify the pupil, their parent or legal guardian, and the involved school principals if approved. Subsection 3 of Section 2 also requires that the Nevada Department of Education will annually publish the total number of pupils who transferred between schools, as well as the number of pupils for each public school. Subsection 4 of Section 2 provides that each district's Board of Trustees must set capacity limits for each grade level. Enroll pupils who submitted an application pursuant to Subsection 3, establish a selection method such as a lottery system for use when the applications exceed available capacity, allow permanent transfers once approved, and submit an annual report detailing the number of applications received, approval of denials, and the reasons for the denials. The data that will be gathered from this bill can help inform what schools are in high demand, why, and any unique programs or offerings the school has, potentially informing avenues for replication and adaptation to other schools. By looking at data regarding schools from schools students are requesting transfers out of, we can also examine potential additional supports needed for those students to address school performance or culture or even the community that the school has. According to subsection 5 of section 2, when processing transfer applications to attend a public school outside a pupil's designated zone, the decision must not consider factors such as their academic, artistic, or athletic abilities, participation or skill in extracurricular activities, disability status, or being an English learner, the pupil's residential address, or prior disciplinary actions. Essentially, this is a lottery system where any student would be able to apply. It's not the same type of qualifications that a magnet program would have. This would be open to any student, so that any student in that community that wishes to go to a different school would then be able to do so. Subsection 6 of Section 2 further establishes an appeals process whereby the application is denied or not acted upon. A parent or guardian may appeal first to the district superintendent and then to the superintendent of public instruction, whose decision is final. These provisions are critical to ensuring a fair, equitable, transparent, and communicative process. Although it's not listed in the slides, Section 3 clarified that a specified source of funding is not required for any additional expenses of local government related to the provisions of this bill. We're also submitting a proposed amendment for additional specificity and to ensure that the process is equitable, transparent, and accessible as possible. The amendment provides that the application would be available in multiple languages. It requires an application only if the pupil wishes to attend a public school outside their zone of attendance. So if a pupil wishes to attend their zone school, there's no application process to navigate. On the first day of each month, it requires that they're posted the number of vacancies for each grade level within this public school in the district. It specifies that a district shall measure the capacity by grade level, not by specialized program. It requires the Board of Trustees of a school district to submit an annual report to the Superintendent of Public Instruction to evaluate the resources available to the district for public school transportation, the number of pupils who have applied to attend a school outside the zone of attendance, and an analysis of the ways in which available transportation resources could be used to provide transportation to pupils who have applied to attend a school outside their zone of attendance. This will help address transportation needs in a data-driven and meaningful way. It also determines capacity to be calculated by subtracting the number of pupils enrolled and the number of school staff from the maximum building capacity. At this time, you've heard the bill provisions, you've heard directly from students who have detailed their educational journeys with you, and you've heard the history behind why open enrollment policies are growing and how they can benefit kids who have historically been left behind. So at this time, I'm just going to go ahead and open it up to questions, and I'm sure there'll be a number, and I'm excited to engage in this discussion with you.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any questions from the members? We'll start with Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for presenting on this. I appreciate the intent of the bill, and in fact, Washoe County has a similar policy to what I think you're aiming for. So my questions are more on logistics. Looking at the amendment, it says that the school district will determine the number of vacancies for each grade level, and we will make determinations based on grade level capacity. But then when I read the definition of capacity on the back, which is based on building capacity, that just brought up some concerns because my building has 2 gyms, a theater, a cafeteria. My own classroom has a capacity of 50, and I don't know that any of us want a classroom of 50. And so I wondered if there is any further discussion on maybe tightening that language on capacity so that it's not fire code, but more of capacity of students that we can teach reasonably.
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record. I think that's an interesting conversation that we can have. I think it should be limited to the classroom capacity, but then also using the building classroom capacity, instead of limiting it to like theater and stuff like that. I can understand, you don't want to include like the building capacity of a theater, which would be hundreds of students, right? So limiting it to that space available within classrooms.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And just to be clear, it's not necessarily fire code, right? Because as I said, my classroom can hold 50 students, but I don't know that anybody thinks that there should be 50 in the class. So your intention is capacity of what's reasonable within the classroom space. Is that correct?
Yes, the goal of that amendment is to ensure that the capacity is what it would fit within that classroom.
Next, we'll have Assemblymember Orndlicker.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. My question is about Section 1.4 on transportation, and I see that your amendment does set up a study of transportation needs, but if I see some tension between your goal of equity and access to educational opportunities and transportation being optional, that I could see that having the districts that don't offer transportation would disadvantage lower income families. So I appreciate your thoughts about that.
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record, and I appreciate your concern. The reality is right now there is no equity, right? Those students that are currently at schools where they are not happy or not satisfied do not have other options unless they're attending a public charter school or unless they're in a magnet program. So there are no other options. There is no transportation available, and they cannot go anywhere else, even if they had access to transportation. I'll be very blunt. As an educator at a public charter school, I watch my families drive for miles away so that they can take their kids to their school of choice. Families will do what is best for them, and I think that we should empower those families to make those decisions and not make assumptions that because of their income that those families won't make the effort or make the choice to do what is best for them. Additionally, there can be various reasons why a family might choose to go to another school. They might choose to take their student to the school that's closest to their grandparents' house because they can drop them off there in the morning. The grandparents can walk them to school, and then they can pick them up in the afternoon, and the parents can come by after them. So I don't, while I agree that transportation ultimately should be the goal and we need to look at how we're going to do that, the reality is, that is a multi-million-dollar investment that we're not going to make this legislative session, especially without evidence that this is a program that will work. And so ultimately, while we know open enrollment policies have been effective in other places, we want to make sure we do it slowly and in steps and in phases. And I think this piece of legislation does just that.
Next, we have Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Chair, for bringing this bill. I know it was from last session and was happy to support it then. And the other thing that I've just personally seen is too, when parents want to be able to go to a school that's near their work so that they can pick up and drop off that way. My only question was around, I've heard that sometimes with the change of school assignment, we don't always make sure our sped kiddos have the bus. So just want to make sure that that's still included in here.
Hi there. So in general, those sped transportation is protected under the federal law, the IDEA. However, I don't see any issue with, specifying in the bill that that will continue to be a right for those families.
Also, ma'am, can you please state your name for the record?
I apologize, Hallie Faulkner.
And thank you. Just want to make sure that was on the record, so thank you so much.
Okay, next we'll have Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you very much for bringing this bill forward. So if a child applies to go to another school, gets in that year, are they then treated like a resident the next year, such that they don't have to keep applying every year?
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record, yes, they would be treated as a resident that next year. So they would, in the case of our student that testified earlier, like Alyssa, once you had that, she would be able to continue to stay. I think Ms. Naveworth is going to provide some additional support.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Vice Chair.
I can elaborate on that as well. Listen, Naveworth, Cornerstone Government Affairs. I'm happy Opportunity 180 for the record. Through you, Vice Chair, to the Assembly member. The concept is that their parents and children can make the choice of where they want to go to school, and that will be a stable choice. So it wouldn't be, year after year. It's that you get to go there and thrive, such as the kids that testified on the record today.
Next we'll have Assemblymember Hardy.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you for being here. And I just had a couple of clarifying questions about how it would work. So I think you might have mentioned. So is this a lottery system? Because I was just curious how they would decide who would be approved. And then, let's say a student, could they maybe try more than one school? Because what if they didn't get in, and then now they'd have to wait till next year and try again?
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record. So this would be similar to the charter school lottery system, in which students can apply, and if there's available seats, then those seats would then be filled based off of that lottery system. But of course, the student would be able to apply for more than one location. Additionally, this piece of legislation does require some transparency about the open seats available, which I think really empowers schools to make the decisions, or families to make the decisions based off of that as well. If I can look at online, and I'm debating between two available elementary schools for my students, I might make the decision to go to one based off of the programs that it has, but also that it has availability.
Members, are there any further questions? Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just had a question about the appeal process. So I noted that if an application is denied, they can appeal it to the superintendent of the district, and then they can appeal it to the state superintendent. And I just wondered, is that authority for the state superintendent something we've given to them elsewhere in statute? Is that typical for that kind of appeals process?
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record. I mean, I think that's actually probably a question for legal, but ultimately, yeah, it's definitely within our realm of power for us to allocate that type of power. I know that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have offline as well.
Members, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Chair. Next, we will hear testimony on this bill. Testimony will be limited to 20-minute windows for support, opposition, and neutral, with 2 minutes per person. We will start here in Carson City, followed by Las Vegas, and then the phones. Please keep remarks to the point and remember to state and spell your name for the record. First, we will hear testimony in support of AB 533 here in Carson City.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva, members of the committee. Sorry, catching my breath. My name is Kayla Maese, spelled Kaylah. Last name is Maese. I'm a civil rights analyst at the ACLU of Nevada, and we are happy to support this bill. Thank you so much.
My name is Sylvia Lassos, and I'm testifying in my individual capacity as the mother of 2 children who were raised in Clark County. They're now young men, both in college, but during their whole careers, I negotiated, worked hard to make sure that they were in the best school. Only once did one of my children go to their assigned zoning school. The rest of the time, I either did a zone variance, asked for a zone variance, or I did magnet schools, always leveraging my knowledge of the system, my expertise as a lawyer to navigate. So at one level, I was being rewarded for being a crafty mom, which we all are, aren't we? But it's an access issue, right? Should crafty moms be able to get their kids, to the school that you think best? So I think that this bill is a great bill in the sense that it's both an access bill, an equity bill, and a choice bill. And I hope that you can support it.
Hello, my name is Carissa Pierce, CARISSA and I'm the Government Affairs Manager with Children's Advocacy Alliance, and I'm here today in support of AB 533 because every child in Nevada deserves a fair shot at high-quality education regardless of their zoning district. At CAA, we focus on promoting equity for children and families in Nevada, and this bill addresses a real gap in access. Right now, far too many families, particularly those in under-resourced communities, are boxed into attending schools that may not meet their children's academic or developmental needs. This bill gives families more flexibility and choice by expanding open enrollment options across districts, helping students attend schools that are the best fit for their learning and well-being. We hear every day from parents who are doing everything they can to access better education opportunities for their children. But current policies leave many of them stuck. This bill is about fairness, transparency, and leveling the playing field so that opportunity is not determined by income or geography. We urge your support for this bill, and thank you for your support for families across Nevada.
Thank you, Chair. And to the committee, my name is Maurice Washington, that's spelled M-A-U-R-I-C-E, Washington, like the state, like the president. I'm here in behalf of Americans for Prosperity. This is one of our core principles that you have the ability to make decisions for yourself. I won't reiterate what has already been stated, and it's quite obvious by the slides that have been presented that we are trying to achieve to close the educational gap. This deals with the fact that you can't deny for an invalid reason. Redlining is a form of, I would say, discrimination in keeping those who are socially impoverished in areas that do not afford them the best educational opportunities. And then it also deals with the fact that it gives a core principle of the parents and the students to make decisions that best suit them. This is a good bill. After working with bills for most of my legislative life that deals with educational matters, this is one of those principles that afford the freedom of education. And I would strongly suggest that the committee support this bill because it's a good piece of legislation and it's needed. So I thank you for your time and your support. Please support AB 533.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, Paul Maratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of AB 533. As this committee knows, the Chamber has a long-standing position to support educational legislation that provides parents and students the options they need to succeed in the classroom. As you know from the presentation, open enrollment creates additional choice for families to select the educational plan that fits their family and their needs best. Open enrollment policies exist in 20 other states and have been linked to increased student outcomes in areas such as graduation rates, standardized test scores, and student family engagement, which we know is important to the student success and closing the achievement gap. Open enrollment policies can also bolster economic development and workforce initiatives due to the flexibility it affords to families and students, and that's why the Chamber is in support, and we encourage your support of AB 533 today. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva, members of the committee. I'm Anthony Curry, Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for Opportunity 180, a nonprofit organization working towards the North Star of every kid graduating high school, college, and career ready, prepared to live the life they dream. Central to our work is ensuring that we are building and fostering conditions for every student to have equitable access to high-quality education that meets their needs. In support of that goal, we support AB 533 as open enrollment policies support stronger educational outcomes. A student's address should not be the sole determinant of their academic success. In Nevada, traditional school zoning has contributed significantly to achievement gaps for students from areas of persistent poverty and other students who have historically been furthest from opportunity. As a state, we are in a unique position to learn from models, best practices, and lessons and implementation from 28 other states, including Colorado and Arizona, and to collaborate with national partners in adapting the policy to ensure Nevada students are in an environment where they learn best. A Fordham Institute study demonstrated measurable gains in both reading and math for students participating in open enrollment in Ohio. In New Orleans, open enrollment is associated with significant academic gains for Black students, with students who utilize open enrollment making test score gains of about 10 percentile compared to peers who did not use open enrollment. Open enrollment also led to higher likelihood of on-time graduation in the same cohort and has led to increases in standardized test scores by 11 to 16 percentiles across subjects. As we saw in the presentation today, open enrollment will provide thousands of Nevada families with the opportunity to give their child an education that meets their needs on a variety of levels. In support of every kid graduating from high school ready for the next step and prepared to thrive, we support AB 533. Thank you.
My name is Grace Adler, and I am from Carson Montessori, and I support AB 533.
For the record, my name is Lily Trotter, and I am a member of Carson Montessori Charter School's legislative team. I support this bill because I'm zoned for Seeliger, technically, and if I wanted to go to Boardwick, open zoning would allow me to go to Boardwick, and that is why I support this bill. Thank you.
I'm Aisha Goins, AESHA, ditto everything everybody else has said, and I am testifying on behalf of the NAACP, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Do we have any support testimony in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, AVH, can we go to the phones for support testimony?
Thank you. If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 533, please press star 9 now. Join the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 270, you are unmuted on our end. Please begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the Education Committee. This is Christian Solomon, West Regional, SOLOMON, West Regional Director of RISE. I'm speaking in support of AB 533. We support expanding access to quality education through open enrollment for all Nevada students. Thank you, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for introducing this bill. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Good afternoon. This is Anna Binder, individually today. How the times have changed. I am a former Attendance Zone Advisory Committee member for the Clark County School District. And back in 2016, we only had about 16 and respectively about 15 middle schools and high schools that were under capacity. And so the work that the district has done since 2016 to now has led us to this school year having 3 high schools that are well over capacity and then another 13 that are still over the optimal enrollment of 110%. If you visit nv.ccsd.net/D as in dog, Z as in zebra, G as in George, every year they do have all of the reports that you guys are referencing in your legislation, including change of school assignment. It'll tell you exactly how many kids came in and went out. And I just, because you guys are talking about the conversation about like facilities versus actual like place, the district actually uses it based on facility capacity as well. And so if you view those hotspot maps, anything over about 115% is in red, and then anything around 110% is still yellow, which technically means there's still not seats available for, at least if we were looking at the 24-25 school year, that would discount 16 middle schools and 15 high schools, which are some of your biggest high schools that people want to go to. So, but I am very happy to report that we have only 3 elementary schools that are in the red, and only 3 high schools, and that's probably going to change because of the new magnet school in the south that opened. So they've done tremendous work, and we have been trying to get them to go away from COSA, the board to step away from COSA and go back to the old system.
Ms. Binder, your 2 minutes. Ms. Binder, your 2
Yes,
minutes are up.
thank
Can
you.
you please
Yeah, no
submit the
worries.
rest of your testimony? Thank you.
Yep.
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear testimony in opposition to AB 533, beginning here in Carson City.
Brad Keating, for the record, Clark County, representing the Clark County School District. We come today in opposition of Assembly Bill 533. I just want to make it very, very clear to start off. We are not in any way, shape, or form opposed to students being able to look at different school options in the Clark County School District. We want that opportunity. We are still struggling to figure out the difference between the COSA process and what this lays out in law, so we want to work with the stakeholders to figure that out. It's been discussed today about the zone variance process. Years ago, we had a zone variance process. That's where sites were able to make decisions. It was an inconsistent process. We moved to the change of school assignment. That also, when the student chooses to go through the COSA process, that allows them to stay at that school for the remainder of their school. That was a question that was asked today. Also, through COSA, we ensure that any student with disabilities receives transportation, and we follow the IEP. Want to be clear with our COSA process currently. We talked about important for open enrollment for things to be universal, which that is, transparent, free, no additional discrimination, and allows parental appeals. The only reason the COSA process doesn't allow parental appeals currently is because the only decision is if there is a seat at the school or if there isn't a seat at the school. There's nothing to appeal. If a seat doesn't exist, the seat doesn't exist. So today we stand in opposition for 2 reasons. Number one, in the application process laid out in the bill, we currently have a completely blind application process. So you apply to 3 schools to be a part of COSA, and then it comes out. In the current application process before you today, one of the provisions is the bill requires us to use behavior as a factor, that we must use behavior as a factor. The Clark County School District does not believe we should be using that. We should not hurt a student based on their behavior at another school. It should be a blind process. The other thing is the capacity, which is in the new amendment. Just to get some clarification on that, as it's important to note, through fire code, it is believed that there could be one student per every 4 square feet of a school. So at an elementary school, it would allow that we'd have over 2,000 students at a school. Clearly, none of us want that. So we look forward to working with the sponsor and all stakeholders to make sure that that's decided. One more thing, in the COSA process that it's important to note for all of you and the committee, There are currently 16,000 students in the Clark County School District who are already in the COSA process, who have already chosen to move schools and have been given that opportunity. There are 35,000 additional seats currently available. So as we talk about open enrollment, I just want it to be clear that we are providing as many seats as we possibly can to any school that's underutilized, and we look forward to working with the chair and every stakeholder to make sure that this bill comes before you during work session in a means that all school districts and stakeholders can support. Thank you.
Do we have anybody else in opposition here in Carson City? Okay, let's go to opposition in Las Vegas. Is there anybody in opposition to AB 533 in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, AVH, can we check the phones?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 533, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 505, you are unmuted. Please proceed. Caller with the last 3 digits 505, you are unmuted on our end. Please proceed. Chair, it appears the caller is not able to unmute and speak to us. Would you like to proceed and move forward?
Yes, we'll proceed. Thank you, AVH. Next, we'll hear testimony in neutral.
Good afternoon. Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. We support the concept and we were in support of the bill as introduced, but like Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, we'd like assurances that capacity won't be calculated on the fire code capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dylan Shaver with Pinion Public Affairs on behalf of the Washoe County School District. I feel like the district was in a pretty good place around the original bill, but under the way we interface with this client, I have to send the amendment through their internal process. I will highlight that our superintendent was here before this committee about a month ago to talk about Washoe's School of Choice program that we believe broadly falls in with the language in the original bill, and that is a program that we were here to proudly say 98% of students who participated were put in their first choice school in that process, and so certainly we agree with the chair's objective in bringing this piece of legislation and look forward to working with everybody to iron out some of the questions that came up today and with our team to go through the amendment as we do. Thank you for the opportunity.
Is there anybody in neutral in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, AVH, do we have anybody testifying in neutral on the lines? Also, would you be able to check potentially if there's anybody in opposition? I think I may have scurried that on too quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 533, please press star 9 to join the queue.
Hi, this is Peter Guzman, president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry I had phone problems earlier. I want to echo in full support of this bill. And again, I apologize that I had phone issues. I'm not going to beleaguer this. We're just going to say echo, but we are in full support. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, we'll count that as support testimony.
Hi, this is Tara Rains. I'm calling in my personal capacity, Tara Raines for the record. Chair DeSilva, I'd also like permission to add support testimony for this bill. Like Professor Lazas, I have spent a lot of time and energy trying to navigate the district and finding a school that's the best fit for our family. And unlike Professor Lazas, I have not had much success despite feeling like I'm a pretty resourceful individual. So I wholeheartedly and excitedly support this bill, and I hope you will too. Have a great day.
Yes, we'll also add that to our support category. I'm sorry, AVH, please proceed.
My apologies, Vice Chair. There are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll have Chair Torres Fawcett for closing remarks.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for taking the time to hear this piece of legislation. It was brought to my attention during that break that in NRS 388.915, where we have the permissions for pupils to wear the tribal, religious, and cultural regalia at graduation, we do have a similar appeals process in place. So this is consistent with what is already in place in other places in statute. This policy does not have to be perfect, but it is a courageous step forward in asserting that every student has the opportunity to attend a school that puts them on a trajectory for success, and that every student and family has the freedom and agency to select a public school that meets their needs. I wanted to leave you with a final word from the National Black Caucus of State Legislatures, which adopted open enrollment as an official policy. They stated that public school open enrollment policies have also been critical to dismantling the historical injustice of redlining, which segregated communities and created educational inequities that continue to disproportionately impact African American families. As a longtime educator, I take pride in enacting a policy to help students access better resources to advance their education. This piece of legislation, this resolution, allows students in our states to choose to enroll in school regardless of where they live, which is important in providing opportunities to students that may not have those same opportunities if they were limited to their school zone based on where they live. As an educator, as a school leader, and as a policymaker, I see the potential this bill has to change lives and to change the trajectories of so many students and close the equity gap for families. Today, we have the possibility to take a critical step forward in realizing that potential and leveling the playing field for our students. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to seeing your support for AB 533. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will now close the hearing on AB 533 and open the hearing on AB 335. This measure revises provisions relating to education. To present this bill, we will have the sponsor, Chair Torres Fawcett.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeSilva and members of the most studious Committee on Education. I am Assemblymember Selena Torres Fawcett, and I represent Assembly District 3. Today I'll be presenting AB 335, or the English Learner Accountability Act, which revises provisions relating to education. Today I am joined by Mr. Ezra Goins, who has worked with ELL students for a number of years in this state and in others, as well as Ms. Elena Faunan, who's a member of NV Alas and is a former principal of a dual language school and has worked in our community for a long time as well. I won't say how many years, probably longer than I've been alive. And so I'm excited to bring a wealth of experience when we present this panel. Nevada's student population has become increasingly diverse, with English language learners, or ELs, now comprising of over 20% of the total K through 12 enrollment. Recent data indicates that the most common languages spoken by these students include Spanish, Tagalog, Chinese, and Vietnamese. Nonetheless, their proficiency, according to the Nevada State Report Card, is only about 11% in English and 11% in math. Despite the growing presence of English learners, not all schools are equally prepared or resourced to meet their academic needs, and more robust data collection and accountability measures are needed to ensure these students receive effective support. Before I walk through the sections of the bill, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mr. Ezra Goins, a Nevada educator who has worked with ELL students for many years to define newcomers, short-term ELs, and long-term ELs, and why it's critical that schools prepare for these student populations. Then I'll pass it to retired Principal Elena Fabunan, who will talk to us about how this bill will serve Nevada students.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Ezra Goins. That's Ezragoins, and I'm currently an educator and a head coach of girls soccer for grades 6 through 12 at Matter East in Las Vegas. My former titles have been multi-language or EL coordinator, EL interventionist in Las Vegas, and in Colorado, title's a little bit different. I was a bilingual tutor and a lead bilingual tutor as well. So the three categories of newcomers, short-term EL and long-term EL break down like this. So newcomers are described as the name suggests. They're newcomers to the country, to the language, or to the region, where their primary language is not standard English. So as a result of this, they have a critically low level of initial English language skills in the 4 domains of English acquisition, which is listening, reading, speaking, and writing. These students need critical support. Because their primary language is not English, they need support to access the language. There's a multitude of ways that they can receive the support using cognates, using audio-visual cues, other supports, Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports with small groups and one-on-one, word-to-word charts and dictionaries, etc. But the key is when a newcomer is learning English as a second language, as a new language, they need support to access what they're supposed to be learning in English with native language support. A short-term EL student is typically described as a student with generally high levels or moderately high levels of English skills, but they're either at average or a little bit below average. This can happen for a multitude of reasons. Maybe they transfer from another district or another state where they were already along the process. They're not newcomers, but they're not completely English proficient. And then your long-term EL students, again, they have an array of skills. There's a broad category that these students fall under, but they're not newcomers. They're not quite short-term students. They've been in U.S. schools for several years. They're either not showing consistent growth or they just haven't exited an ELD program, whether that's WIDA scores or whatever the testing is. They haven't proven their English proficiency. And this can include students that they have completed grade level work. They have, in fact, graduated high school, but they never officially exited an EL program. And those students are also in that category of long-term EL students.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the Education Committee. My name is Elena Fabunan, E-L-E-N-A. Fabunan, and before I became a principal, I was a student who didn't speak English, and actually I'm probably an abuela now, and I was born in Mexico. My mother was born in Mexico, my father came from the Philippines, so I often call myself a Mexipina or a Filicana, depending on the day or the dish. Are we having tacos, or are we having lumpia? But back then, I was a quiet child trying to make sense of a new country, a new language, and a school system that wasn't set up for students like me. That experience didn't break me, it shaped me. It led me to become a bilingual teacher when language support often meant handing a student a worksheet and walking away. It pushed me to earn a master's in counseling because I knew multilingual learners didn't just need translation. They needed to feel seen, safe, and supported. And it's why I've spent nearly 40 years making sure students don't just survive in school, but truly belong in it. In 2017, I became the principal of Global Community High School, Nevada's only high school created specifically for newcomer students. When I stepped in mid-year, our NSPF index score was just 14.2%, a number that reflected not student potential, but a lack of systems and support. By the end of my first full year in 2018-19, we nearly doubled that to 27.5%. By 21-22, even in the aftermath of COVID, we reached 40.5%. But when I retired in 22-23, that score dropped to 13%. I don't share that to cast blame. I share it to how fragile progress can be without consistency, policy, and structure. Our English growth tells a similar story. In 2018, 11.5 of students met their adequate growth percentile. In 21-22, 10.5%, and in 22-23, less than 5%. Chronic absenteeism, often a reflection of school climate, steadily declined during my leadership because students showed up when they feel safe, seen, and supported. Let me tell you about one of them. Tao came to Global from Vietnam at age 17 with very limited English. Every day she rode the public bus an hour and a half each way, just to attend a school where she felt supported. She earned her bachelor's degree in Florida, worked in healthcare for years in Texas, returned to Las Vegas to graduate for graduate school, and in 2024 earned her doctorate in occupational therapy. In her own words, Global Community High School is a welcoming and supportive environment designed for immigrant students with limited English proficiency. With dedicated teachers and staff, students receive individualized attention, emotional support, and the resources needed to succeed. The school fosters a sense of belonging, empowering students to overcome challenges and achieve their goals in a nurturing and inclusive setting. That happens when we build schools around students' potential, not just their barriers. But this just can't happen at one school. This is a statewide issue. Across Nevada, over 70,000 English learners make up more than 14% of our K-12 population. Only 11.3% are proficient in math, and just 11.4% proficient in English. The EL graduation rate is 75.4% compared to 82.5% for all students. And many educators still lack the training needed to fully support multilingual learners. The reality is English learners are falling behind, and we haven't been able to get back the traction we once had. In 2019, there was an effort to improve outcomes for ELs, but the bill became punitive and lost momentum. We lost what little progress we had made, and it hasn't come back. That's why AB 335 is not only the right bill, but it's the right time. This bill is different. It is built on what we know works, and it focuses on all districts statewide. It creates structures that are not reactive, but sustainable. AB 335 requires data reporting and improvement planning for ELs in school performance plans, categorizes ELs for targeted intervention, eliminates ineffective corrective action plans from AB 219, establishes training requirements for all educators with full compliance by 2030, introduces a 0-year option for high school newcomers to learn English and earn a diploma without penalizing schools, and creates a statewide English Learner Advisory Council, bringing educators, community members, and researchers to the table, and calls for shared definition and vision for dual language education in Nevada. AB 335 doesn't lower the bar, it strengthens the system that supports them. It values multilingualism, recognizes the assets our students bring, and ensures policies are guided by experience, data, and equity. In addition to my work as principal, I serve on the board of the Nevada Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, where I collaborate with leaders across the state who are deeply committed to building more equitable, culturally responsive schools. We believe this bill is one of the most meaningful steps we can take right now to support English learners across Nevada. Let's not do what's easy, let's do what's right. I respectfully urge your full support of AB 335. Thank you for your time, and thank you for standing up for students who need us most.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll go ahead and go through, Assemblymember Torres Foster for the record, I'll go ahead and go through the sections of this piece of legislation. Section 2 revises requirements for the school performance plans, which seeks to improve the achievement of pupils enrolled in the school. It requires a principal to consult an administrator who works to serve ELs, along with the other school employees in the plan development and annual reviews. This plan must include methods for closing gaps in achievement, if any, between demographic groups of pupils in the school, including gaps between pupils who are and pupils who are not ELs in foster care and economically disadvantaged students. Additionally, if ELs comprise of at least 10% of the pupil population. Closing gaps between pupils who are ELs and those who are not must be the primary goal of the plan. The plan must also include 1, specific actions to improve the achievement of EL pupils and plans to monitor those actions, and 2, attainable quantitative goals for improvement in achievement of pupils who are newcomers to the English language, short-term English learners, and long-term English learners. So the goal in this section really is that we're planning and we are preparing to serve EL student populations in our schools. Section 4 concerns the designation of an employee in each school district to serve as an administrator who works to serve ELs, outlining their experience requirements in working with ELs and as an effective school leader. I'll be honest, I reviewed a couple emails and it seems that there was confusion on what this part of the legislation with the amendment is doing. Districts already have these roles. We are not creating more bureaucracy. These are roles that exist in districts. We're just adding requirements so that we ensure that those people that are working in those positions meet the qualifications so that they can serve EL students. These are people that are we currently, the two that I can speak to right now in Southern Nevada and in Washoe, meet these requirements. So this isn't that we're doing an overhaul, we're just saying exactly what this role should be required to have. It's not creating more bureaucracy, it's just putting requirements for the administrator that has that role. Each district should have somebody that is doing that role right now. This position is intended to encompass any existing positions that districts may have in place right now to support ELs. The administrator will oversee assessments and reassessment of ELs and provide trainings designed to address the needs of pupils who are ELs to educational staff members. Additionally, they would provide support to schools on what that professional development for supporting ELs looks like. Section 5 describes the training requirements for licensed teachers concerning English language acquisition. For some reason, I was getting emails about how this requires teachers that are math teachers or science teachers to teach ELA. I have a master's in secondary education with an emphasis in English literature and teaching English as a second language. And I just want to make clear that teaching language is not the responsibility of an ELA teacher. Teaching language is the responsibility of every teacher. My husband's a math teacher. He has a vocab wall in English and Spanish in his classroom to make sure his students have the supports that they need. I have many friends that are science teachers, and they're making sure that they're using sentence stems when they're working on long assignments so that students can have the supports and scaffolds they need. So the fact that this is a conversation is probably further emphasis of why this is important, because our teachers need to have the resources to be successful and close these gaps. And EL students are not an English teacher problem. These are a Nevada student that deserve access to that high quality education. And so it is essential that teachers have the training they need to support these students. Once again, English language acquisition is not ELA. I'm not asking teachers to teach grammar in a math class. We're asking them to provide the supports necessary and that are legally required, and that we have a responsibility to professionally develop our teachers to ensure that they can do so. Individuals who are teachers as of October 1st, 2025 must demonstrate proof that they've received this training. You'll notice that we removed Section 12, which was like the licensing requirement in this piece of legislation too. The intent was never for us to require an additional license or an additional classes for licensure. It's supposed to be done at a school level. Section 6 clarifies that pupil achievement data concerning a pupil who is a newcomer to the English language will not negatively impact the performance rating of any employee at the school in which the pupil is enrolled, nor the school or school district's ratings. Additionally, data collected and maintained for the statewide system of accountability must be disaggregated to show subcategories of ELs, including ELs who are newcomers to the English language, pupils in an EL program for less than 2 years, and those who are short-term ELs, which is in an EL program for 2 to 6 years, and those who are long-term ELs, so that we can really review the data, like how are our newcomers doing on state testing, how are our short-term ELs doing, and how are our long-term ELs doing on that data. Section 8 permits NDE to adopt regulations needed for the provisions of this statute. Section 10 adds a provision to the policy of the Board of Trustees for each school district that must develop for teaching English to ELs, allowing a pupil who is a newcomer to the English language to remain in high school for 10 semesters or until they reach age 21, whichever is earlier. Additionally, NDE must consult with an administrator who works to serve ELs in monitoring the implementation of this policy. The goal is for us to allow for students, if they come here to this country at 14, then they would have 5 years, so they can really spend that first year learning English, and they can then graduate high school within that 5 years. Technically, schools can do this right now, but the problem is that it negatively impacts their graduation rate. With this bill, it would not have that negative impact on their graduation rate. Section 11 requires NDE to establish the English Learner Advisory Council for the 25-26 interim to study policies to support English language acquisition, development, and literacy. NDE must submit a report to the legislature by October 31st, 2026 regarding the council's activities, findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Additionally, the council may request the drafting of one legislative measure for the 84th session relating to the scope of the council. The council will have 8 members, including the superintendent of public instruction, administrators at the school and school district level, representatives of ENCHI with expertise in language acquisition, and members with expertise in public policy. Section 13 clarifies that a specified source of funding is not required for any additional expense of local government related to the provisions of this bill. At this time, I'll go ahead. Section 14 repeals NRS 388.408, which relates to the adoption of the corrective action plan. What's funny, and I think when you're in this building long enough, you mature and you see like where policies maybe weren't as well crafted as they could have been. That is a bill that I championed in my first legislative session. That was AB 219 in the 2019 legislative session. I'm actually repealing it. And so I'm asking to repeal it and change it and grow this the implementation so that instead of punitive, we're planning ahead so that we can support our students. So at this time, I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any questions from the committee? Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Chair, not only for presenting this bill, but for saying what I say all the time, which is that we are all language teachers, right? I'm a social studies teacher, but it is our job to be supporting all of our kiddos. And the high school where I teach is a newcomer center in Washoe County. And so I have students that speak Marshallese and students that speak French and Arabic. And so I appreciate your work. My question is simply on the logistics of Section 12 on when we have to submit proof of our training. I absolutely believe every teacher should be trained on EL, and I think that many of us want this training and this support. My question is just, are you requiring an additional course for us to take, or will this be part of our ongoing professional development within the schools or within the district? And do we have to submit it as part of our licensure? Like, what is just the process?
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett for the record. So I'm reviewing the amendment as well as this piece of legislation. The goal is for us to withdraw Section 12, and then ultimately it would require that NDE create the programming. I understand that the amendment in front of you doesn't necessarily reflect that. I apologize, that's my error, but I was presenting 3 bills at once, so this is what happens. But my goal is for us to remove Section 12 and then require NDE to provide the regulations so that professional development can be done at a school-wide level or district level. I know in districts that have an administrator that oversees EL, this would be the great opportunity for that district, that administrator, or that oftentimes assistant superintendent, then to provide that supervision over what that would look like. And so the goal is not for this to be an additional course in licensure.
Committee members, any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Chair. I believe there's no more questions, so we will begin testimony on the bill. Testimony will be limited to 20-minute windows for support, opposition, and neutral, with 2 minutes per person. We will start here in Carson City, followed by Las Vegas, and then the phones. Please keep remarks to the point and remember to state and spell your name for the record. First, we'll hear testimony in support of AB 335 here in Carson City.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. For the record, my name is Dr. Silvina Jover, Silvina and I'm currently appearing before you as a member of the Nevada Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, NVLS for short. I am testifying today in support of AB 335. As an educator of emerging bilinguals for more than a decade across 2 different states, and an immigrant myself, I always appreciate, advocate, and work with and for tools that will protect and or expand the supports that our emerging bilingual students and families receive. During the past 8 years, I have been wearing many ELAD and dual language hats at a Title I high school located on the east side of Las Vegas, as a social studies teacher, teaching history in Spanish, and currently as its ELAD facilitator.
My main responsibility is to immigrant families, making sure their educational needs are met. Truth is, which is not a secret, that our newcomers and emerging multilinguals in general tend to be served fulfilling the bare minimum, usually overseeing how our kids show up and the funds of knowledge they bring to the table. Multiculturalism and multilingualism should be celebrated and supported for the benefit of all students and the growth of our community, particularly if we think about Vegas' demographic. Being well-versed in ELAD and dual language implementation in Nevada and other states, I would recommend incorporating a language education plan, similar but less thorough than an IEP. This would serve as an accountability tool for our schools, also positively assisting in spaces such as WIDA testing, but more importantly, a way of being on top of our emerging bilinguals' language needs, which will allow us educators to better understand their journey and help them in a more efficient manner, thus allowing them to shine in their language acquisition efforts. Muchísimas gracias for your time.
Stating for the record, my name is Ramona Esparza-Stafford. I'll spell that. It's a mouthful. RAMONA-ESPARZASTOFFREAGN. And I am the president of NVALAS, which has already been stated or aforementioned, but I'm also a former retired principal of a comprehensive high school that served a large ELL population. I actually was the principal when Ms. Fabian was my vice principal. And what I want to say is that leadership matters. And the reason that this bill is so important and why we are in support of it is because there's a lack of resources and supports for those administrators in the school building that serve high ELL populations. That accountability is essential so that individuals are held accountable and that can design programming. Back in the time when she was, I would say, Assembly Member Torres, not with the faucet added, congratulations. That bill that was implemented was oftentimes a bill of compliance, and individuals would do and check boxes by filling out forms. But what I want to say to you is that leaders that understand the essential and vital work that's necessary for newcomers and our ELL students to succeed and thrive, we need to have this accountability measure with AB 335. So I'm just here to say that we would be in full support for our leaders, and we have very many members that really believe in serving students in the immigrant community. And I'm just saying, in the times that we're in, this is essential for us to be sure that this is going to go forward, and we are definitely on board to support that work. Thank you.
My name is Sylvia Lasos. I'm taking off my crafty mom hat, and I am now speaking as a representative of the Nevada Immigrant Coalition and as a proud founder of the NVALAS group that you have been hearing from. I want to say that I want to totally commend Selena Torres-Fawcett for recognizing that AB 219 has to be changed. We have to rethink policy when things aren't working. And it is not often that a legislature will say, hey, you know, what I passed 5 years ago, I need to change that. So I hope that you totally support that effort. I want to emphasize that we didn't think the original bill was punitive, but it has turned out to be a paperwork bill. And I think we can all agree that we need to shift away from paperwork and shift to work and getting work done. This bill does that. This bill also picks up important pieces of the Zoom bill and Zoom policy that we passed almost 10 years ago, in reinstituting the English Mastery Council, or that council of experts that can work with the Nevada superintendent, and emphasizing data and thinking about what the data tells us is happening to ELL kids. It's also innovative in bringing in 0 year for students that need that extra time for high school to graduate and won't get turned away into adult education, a place where more teenage ELL kids founder and fail, and not penalizing good principals by taking on ELL students. So this is a great bill. I told Joan Ebert, I feel sometimes like a hamster in a wheel doing things over and over again. This bill is creative and gets us off that hamster wheel.
Austin Daly on behalf of the University of Nevada, Reno, for the record. We are in full support of AB 335, which will help to strengthen educational opportunities for English learners in Nevada. We understand that the education that EL students in K-12 schools receive will directly impact their success throughout their higher education journey. I want to thank Assemblymember Torres Fawcett for prioritizing the needs of English learners. This legislation is an important step in helping these students reach their full potential. Thank you.
Good morning, or maybe, it's good afternoon. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and we are in support of the bill and appreciate the clarification on the training. We understand that it's part of the regular training that teachers do and not requiring teachers to go out and get another degree. And I want to thank Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch for your question. So thank you.
My name is Aisha Goins, AESHA-GOINS. I am here on behalf of the NAACP. We support this bill, but also mostly just because my brother was a presenter, so I just have to support it. But thank you very much.
My name is Megan Waugh, MEGANWAUGH. I am the Director of English Language Development for Washoe County School District, and I'm here in support of this bill, particularly as it takes, yes, what was once viewed as compliant or punitive in AB 219, and it makes it more of a proactive approach. Also really signaling in on what the Assemblyman said is that all teachers are teachers of language. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the committee. My name is Eric Jang. I'm the Executive Director, ERICJNG of One API Nevada, advocating for the fast-growing Asian American community. I want to thank the sponsor, Chair Torres Fawcett, for being a champion for all these sessions for English language learners. I myself, as a former, that was at that time called ESL, English Second Language, and that's how I got here. And I'm here to offer our support for AB 335. This bill is especially critical to our Asian American family. Where over 1 in 3 Asian American in Nevada speak English less than very well, according to census. That's the definition of English limited proficient, and many families navigate the school systems while overcoming significant language barriers. In Clark County alone, thousands of Asian students are designated as DELLs, and across the state, many students from immigrant and refugee families face systemic gaps in educational access simply due to limited English proficiency. These students are bright, they're capable and eager to succeed, and we want to make sure that we support the educators to support them. It's a meaningful step toward ensuring they're not left behind. By improving how we access and support the English language learners, this bill help build on education environment that's more equitable, inclusive, and data informed. Our community, like many others, will benefit from the policy and ensure linguistically diverse students get the resources, culturally competent instruction, and structural support they need to thrive. So we urge your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go for towards support testimony in Las Vegas. Is anybody in Las Vegas in support of AB 335?
Kenneth Varner, Kennethvarner. Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the Assembly Education Committee. My name is Dr. Kenny Varner. I serve as the Associate Dean for Academic Programs and Initiatives at the UNLV College of Education. I speak today as both an educator and as an English language learner myself, and on behalf of UNLV's College of Education in strong support of AB 335. UNLV is recognized as one of the most diverse universities in the nation, and our College of Education serves as a training ground for future educators deeply committed to equity and inclusion. Our programs prepare teachers with an explicit focus on English language acquisition and development, literacy, as well as sustaining pedagogies. In fact, all pre-service teachers in our early childhood and special ed programs graduate qualified for the endorsement in English language acquisition and development. We know from both research and practice that English learners require intentional, sustained support, not only to acquire language, but to thrive academically and socially in every aspect of their schooling. AB 335 addresses critical structural gaps. By addressing requirements and qualifications for directors of multilingual student services in large districts, the bill ensures English language learners are not an afterthought, but they become a central part of school improvement planning. The mandate for teacher training and English language acquisition directly supports what we already emphasize in our ed prep programs. Some may say, why make all teachers receive additional training? That sounds bloaty. And I'm not known as a sports person myself, but I will say that winning teams don't just practice on game day. And just like any high quality profession, we want people to continue the engagement of training beyond their initial training and teacher prep programs. And so this type of teacher professional development is critical importance. Importantly, AB 335 protects schools and educators from being penalized for working with newcomer students whose language acquisition timelines don't align with standardized metrics. This is not only fair policy, it's sound pedagogy. At UNLV, we stand ready to partner on implementation of this bill through evidence-based research, curriculum alignment, and professional development. This bill gives Nevada a strong foundation to better serve English language learners and elevate the quality of public education statewide. We thank Assembly Member and Chair Torres Fawcett for bringing this critically important bill. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in support in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, AVH, can we go to the phone lines?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 335, please press star 9 to join the queue. Again, to provide testimony in support of AB 335, please press star 9 to join the queue.
Good afternoon, Anna Binder again. I just wanted to echo all the support, and most of the women sitting there co-presenting have taught me everything that I know about ELL and all of their amazing work over these years, and I'm so proud of them and what they have brought to you today, so thank you.
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have testimony in opposition to AB 335. Is anybody here in Carson City? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anybody in Las Vegas in opposition to AB 335? Okay, seeing nobody in Las Vegas, AVH, can we go to the phone lines?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 335, please press star 9 now to join the queue. It appears there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go to neutral. Any neutral testimony on AB 335 here in Carson City? Please proceed.
My name is John Ippolito. Try not to move this. I think I really am neutral, sir. Teacher shortage. I know in Las Vegas there's a big teacher shortage. And my question is, do we really want to put more on the teachers' plates? As a former educator, I didn't like meetings. I didn't like wasted time. And when I taught math in Stockton, some of my best math students were not native English speakers. No problem at all. I do think just by being in the class and communicating, we talked about math, and I think it was fine. The other thing, two of my twins, my younger twins, we put them in a dual immersion program when they were in first grade, where it was 80% Spanish. My daughter cried for 2 weeks, but ultimately she learned Spanish. And my son, he could have cared less. He didn't understand what was going on either the first 2 weeks, but he didn't care as long as no one messed with him and he got to play. And then I have a very good friend who's a native Spanish speaker. And her family, when they came here, they they really felt it was important that their kids learned English without an accent. What she told me is that her parents didn't want them to be house cleaners and landscapers. And my friend now, her English is better than her Spanish, and she's been very successful. In Washoe County, we have Parent University. So think about maybe educating the parents how it's important for the kids to learn English and be able to speak without an accent by the time they're adults. Maybe that would be a better approach. You're not going to move my comments, I hope. Thank you very much, John Ippolito.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito. I believe we'll leave that in neutral. Thank you. AVH is, I'm sorry, that's in Las Vegas. Do we have any testimony in neutral in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, AVH, do we have any testimony in neutral on the phone lines?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 335, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Vice Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll bring back Chair Torres Fawcett for closing remarks.
Ezra Goins for the record. I just wanted to add something that the failure to plan equals planning to fail. Learning how to support EL students is learning to understand the student. And when EL students are planned for, they're prepared for, and they're expected, they're the ultimate beneficiaries. I have seen countless occasions where a teacher is actually not prepared with the knowledge and the skills to teach an EL student, but because their heart and their mind is planning and preparing for the actual child, those kids grow like crazy. So this bill is going to give the support that teachers need to be prepared for these students and to make an environment for students to also be ready and be supported to get their needs filled. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record. First, I want to thank NV Alas for coming to me with this piece of legislation. We worked extensively and had many conversations leading up to this session to bring this bill forward. And I don't think it's too often that you have a legislator coming back and saying, hey, I need to repeal my own bill from 2019. And I think we found a way to make it better. And this is what I'm asking to do right now, is to correct a program that has unfortunately become punitive, and I don't think it adequately meets the needs of Nevada students, and I think that we can fix that with this legislative body. I know that it was mentioned earlier that, this might require teachers to do more. That's not the expectation. Teachers need the supports right now so that they can serve EL students. All teachers are responsible for providing those supports to EL students. With that, in closing, I just want to celebrate the multi-accented, multicultural faces of English language learners and the contributions that they have. I truly believe that it is beneficial when we have people that are multilingual and that can communicate with more people. And we have students that are emerging bilinguals, sometimes emerging trilinguals or quadrilinguals, and we can make sure that we have this generation of individuals that can communicate across boundaries. And I don't think it matters whether they have an accent, but what does matter is that we can ensure that they're proficient in English and math, and I think this bill does that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And at this time, we'll close the hearing on AB 335, and we'll go into recess. Okay, we will now open the hearing on AB 494. This measure revises provisions relating to education. To present this bill, we have Chair Torres Fawcett. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair De Silva, and members of the hardest working committee on education this afternoon. My name is Assemblymember Selena Torres Fawcett, and I'm here once again representing Assembly District 3, and I'm here to present AB 494 for your consideration. This bill ensures the continuation of critical protections for students and families within Nevada's education system. It is a proactive measure to uphold essential federal education laws should they ever be repealed at the federal level. Federal laws such as the Individuals with Disability Act, or IDA, and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, and the Every Student Succeeds Act provide foundational protections for students across the country. These laws safeguard the rights of students with disabilities and ensure the privacy of educational and health records and prohibit discrimination based on color, national origin, race, and sex. However, in an era of shifting federal policies, we cannot take these protections for granted. AB 494 establishes a safeguard by enshrining these protections into state law should they be repealed. This ensures students, families, and educators in Nevada continue to operate under the same guidelines that have provided stability and fairness in education for decades. All Nevada students, but particularly our students struggling with disabilities, have been protected under these measures. To take these protections away is not only cruel, but it sends a message that leaders do not care about our students who will be the future of our state. It is important for every elected leader to focus on protecting Nevada children and not carry the bag for a party leader in Washington, D.C. I'm going to go ahead and summarize the bill. The bill proposes that in the event of any aforementioned federal laws are repealed, Nevada will continue to recognize and enforce them as they existed. Specifically, Section 2 ensures that IDA remains applicable in Nevada, guaranteeing students with disabilities retain their rights to a free, appropriate public education. Additionally, if IDA is repealed, a person who previously had the right to bring a civil action in the District Court of the United States is authorized to bring such action to a court of competent jurisdiction in this state. This would ensure that Nevada's special education students continue to receive the services that they deserve, and that Nevada educators continue to provide those services. Section 3 through 6 provide similar continuity for FERPA, HIPAA, Title VI, and Title IX, preserving student privacy protections, anti-discrimination measures in education. Section 7 makes necessary conforming changes to the NRS to align with these provisions, and Section 8 clarifies that local governments will be responsible for any additional expenses related to the implementation of federal laws if they are repealed. I would also like to briefly walk the committee through the conceptual amendment, which adds the following provisions of the bill. First, in addition to the federal laws which would continue to apply in Nevada in the event of a federal repeal as a result of this bill, it would add the Every Student Succeeds Act as most recently authorized. Additionally, it would require the approval of the IFC before the acceptance of any block grants for K-12 education purposes, and as a condition of such approval, require IFC to determine that the block grant would continue to be used to support programs that are currently funded using federal money. So in the case that we were to receive a block grant from the federal government instead of the current way that we are funded, this would ensure that IFC consider how we're going to continue to support these programs. So how are we going to continue to support students with disabilities and fund those programs? How are we going to continue to ensure that we are supporting Title I schools, which is under ESSA. Additionally, and finally, it requires the NDE to adopt any regulations necessary to facilitate the implementation of a state level of the federal laws included in the bill within 6 months after the repeal of such federal law. So the NDE would have to consider this and propose those regulations. At this time, I stand open to any questions.
Thank you, Chair. Committee, are there any questions at this time? Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So it appears that this body is concerned that the federal government or Congress might actually repeal some statutes as it relates to education. With that in mind, why was July 1st chosen as the effective date?
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett for the record. So essentially, this piece of legislation clarifies that if any of these pieces of legislation that exist right now in federal law were to be repealed, that after July 1st, 2025, then NDE would be responsible for creating those regulations. So it doesn't necessarily mean that NDE would have to create those processes immediately upon July 1st, and I'm sure legal can chime in if necessary, but essentially what it is saying is that if they were to be repealed in October of next year, then within 6 months they would have to create those processes.
So then, if Congress decides to act quickly and repeal the law and thus the regulations before July 1, none of those are in effect on July 1, and there's nothing to implement. So it seems like there's a gap in the approach here.
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett for the record. So if it is the leisure of this committee, we can put it upon passage. I'm happy to accept that amendment, so I will go ahead and just kind of update my notes here. That way, it would be 6 months from then that NDE would have to have those regs established, just to obviously give some time. Thank you.
Committee members, any questions? Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Chair, for presenting this. You know, as fellow educators, I think we know the importance of these programs. And so can you just speak a little bit about the services that we would lose, especially if IDEA is repealed at a national level, and what we would see for our kiddos on a day-to-day in the classroom?
Thank you, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record. As a school leader, one of the ways that we use the funding for IDEA is for special education teachers and professionals in classrooms that can sometimes be assistants. That might be one-on-one aides, depending on the student. If IDEA laws as they exist right now were to be repealed, then there would be no process, no cause. Right now, if a student has an IEP, we would actually be eliminating the IEP system as it exists right now, although I'm sure there are some references to state statute. Also, the appeals process, the rights of families during that process, who would be a part of that IEP team, that might be something. When we add, the amendment does add the Every Student Succeeds Act. When we think about ESSA and why that is significant. ESSA specifically allows for like Title I and Title III funding, and so making sure that we're supporting schools in like historically disenfranchised communities. When we look at Title III is including like the responsibilities of schools to provide supports to English language learners that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. But those schools right now receive funding. So a school that exists, School A, might receive funding for Title I or Title III. When they get those funding, they're required to use it for certain programs. It can't just be used for anything, right? So Title I might be used to support like students facing hardship. It could be used on a number of different things. It could be used for professionals in classrooms, right? And so there's definitely like freedom for educators to make those decisions. So I don't feel as a school leader, I don't feel like it's actually like restraining my ability to make purchases. I think it allows for me to make the purchases that I need on a school campus, and I think my fellow administrators would say the same thing. It's not tying my hands, it's empowering me to make the decisions that are right for our kids and to make sure that every student has access to those resources.
Committee members, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, at this time, thank you, Chair. At this time, we will move into testimony on this bill. Testimony will be limited to 20-minute windows for support, opposition, and neutral, with 2 minutes per person. We will start here in Carson City, followed by Las Vegas, and then the phones. Please keep remarks to the point, and remember to state and spell your name for the record. First, we will hear testimony in support of AB 494 here in Carson City.
Hello, my name is Carissa Pierce, and I represent the Children's Advocacy Alliance, and we are in full support of this bill. I want to say thank you to the sponsor, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for bringing this forward, and we just really appreciate the foresight for protecting our children in Nevada, so thank you.
Hello, members of this committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. And during unprecedented times, we come to you today perhaps supporting the strongest bill that we've ever come to you guys asking for. And students with disabilities should be mainstreamed in order to demonstrate the value of all students. In doing so, they should receive a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. and the IDEA Act provides these opportunities. No student's educational experience will be perfect, just as no human being is. However, an unbiased, multidisciplinary team approach to the development of an individualized education plan, detailing at length how a student will equally access education services, must be mandatory. This access must be free from any forms of corporal punishment, including without limitation, restraint, and seclusion, inappropriate or overused suspension or expulsions, bullying, and without limitation, other forms of harassment. With the right approach, students with disabilities can become productive members of society. However, without legal protections, this is merely a dream. Thank you for your time and consideration, and thank you to the member for supporting this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and we are in support of the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair De Silva and members of the committee. I'm Anthony Curry, Director of Advocacy Public Policy for Opportunity 180, a nonprofit organization working towards a North Star of every kid graduating high school, college, and career ready, prepared to live their life they dream. We're in support of AB 494 because it continues important protections for students and allows them to focus on learning. Thanks.
Okay, next we'll go to support testimony in Las Vegas. Is there anybody in support of AB 494 in Las Vegas? Okay, seeing none, AVH, we'll go to the phone lines for support testimony.
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 494, please press star 9 now to join the queue.
Good afternoon. Again, this is Anna Binder here individually, but I do want to express my support for this bill. It is a critical safeguard for the rights of individuals with disabilities. As many know, I have 3 children with autism, and my youngest is currently in a self-contained classroom, and we finally got him his one-to-one aid. So as you can imagine, as news trickles down, the worry that not just parents like me, but others like me in our state are worried about our children. So we really do appreciate this coming forward. We really hope that we don't have to use this, but if we do, again, we just really want to thank you so much, Assembly Member Torres Fawcett, for putting this down and hopefully helping us sleep a little better at night despite what's going on at the federal level. Thank you.
There are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to opposition testimony. Is there anybody in opposition testimony here in Carson City to AB 494? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to Las Vegas. Is there anybody in opposition testimony in Las Vegas on this assembly bill? Okay, seeing nobody, AVH, can we go to the phone lines?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 494, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Again, if you would like to provide testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 494, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to neutral testimony. Is there anybody wishing to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 494 here in Carson City?
Good afternoon, Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. We're speaking in neutral due to the profound concern over the potential consequences of dismantling the Department of Education, a move that would severely jeopardize our students' access to a quality education. The current administration is taking a wrecking ball to public education. If successful, it will have catastrophic impacts on our students, educators, and families in Nevada. That's why the National Education Association, our national union and the largest labor union in the country, has joined forces with the NAACP and AFSCME Maryland Council 3 and parents to file suit. We agree the administration's actions are not only harmful, they're unconstitutional. Today's presentation makes clear the federal government plays a critical role in ensuring that our students with specific needs are protected, fed, and adequately supported. This agency exists not for bureaucracy's sake, but to serve our children. But with Elon, Trump, and McMahon plotting to eliminate the department for a billionaire tax break, here's what Nevada is facing in potential cuts. IDEA, $104 million, Title I, $161 million, Pell Grants, $200 million, CTE, almost $13 million. These funds are not luxuries, they are lifelines, and losing these programs would not only threaten educational equity, but break our promise to provide every child with the chance to succeed. When federal funding falls short, the burden shifts to the state, and Nevada can't afford to make up the difference because we're already $4,000 below the national average in per pupil funding. And with the governor proposing just $2 per student, we are failing to meet the moment. Our stretched budgets will be asked to do more with less, and that's all the more reason to pass the plan for optimal funding set forth by the Commission on School Funding. We agree IDEA is important, and we will do everything in our power to protect our students and their futures, and we invite everyone to join with NSEA and the NEA in protesting federal cuts and fighting back through any possible venues we can. Families across Nevada are relying on us. They know what we need to support our schools, and they understand students need more opportunities, more resources, and greater protections, not less. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move that to opposition testimony. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brian Wallace, Nevada State Education Association, who's been the voice of educators for 125 years in all 17 counties. I come to you today in neutral on this bill, and I thank the Assembly member for bringing it forward. But it's unfathomable that as a teacher, a husband of a special education teacher, that we are in this position due to the recklessness of both the Trump administration and the Lombardo administration. Education is a fundamental right in this nation, and the considerations that we want to see it torn down at the federal level and be shifted to departments that are already laying off approximately 20,000 people, while we've already seen the Department of Ed gutted by 50%, and to think that somehow we as a state can continue to move this forward for some of our most vulnerable students is not real. Everything is not all right when we have to bring bills like this before a committee such as yours. This is not the burden we signed up for as educators right now. This is not the burden we should be shouldering of wondering how block grants are going to work, or these most vulnerable students are going to have the push-in services that I need, the supports in my classroom, because me and my colleagues cannot go about this alone. While the bill has its good intentions, those good intentions needed to remain at the federal level because it is a constitutional right of education within this nation, and that is what me and my colleagues have signed up for when it comes to teaching Nevada's students. We shouldn't be distracted by this right now. We should feel secure that the federal government is going to uplift all of us and protect these educational rights of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to neutral testimony in Las Vegas. Okay, seeing nobody in Las Vegas, AVH, can we go to the phones for neutral testimony on AB 494?
If you would like to testify in neutral for AB 494, please press star 9 to join the queue. Again, to provide neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 494, please press star 9. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Now we'll bring the bill sponsor back up for closing remarks.
Thank you. Assemblymember Torres Plaza, for the record. By passing this bill, we reaffirm Nevada's commitment to upholding educational equity, civil rights, and privacy, regardless of the decisions made at the federal level. I'm not sure that I understand the testimony that came in neutral today, because I think it fails to recognize the reality of the state of education right now. The reality is, I support the Department of Education in the United States, and I support the work that it does. But the reality is that we have a national leader and unelected bureaucrat, Elon Musk, who is working to dismantle that existence of the Department of Education as it exists right now. So the unfortunate reality is that we are forced as a legislative body that meets only for 120 days every other year to have a conversation of whether or not we are going to protect our students and ensure that we have these rights or not. That's the conversation. And we have an opportunity, a unique opportunity right now and only for the next 63 days to have this conversation. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's shameful that we're at this point, but AB 494 is a necessary step for our children. It's a necessary step to ensure this body focuses on the students of Nevada and not the egos of the men in Washington, D.C. I would like to thank the vice chair of this committee for the opportunity to present this bill, and thank you for taking the opportunity to hear AB 494. I urge your support, and I'm happy to continue working on this piece of legislation to ensure that every student in Nevada has access to that high-quality education.
Thank you, Chair. I will now close the hearing on AB 494. A 1-minute recess.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and reconvene, and we will open the hearing on AB 465. When you're ready, please begin.
Thank you. My apologies, Chair and committee members. As you know, at this point in the session, we are running around doing all kinds of things on different floors, so I'm sorry about the disruption. With that, thank you, Chair Torres Fawcett and members of the committee for hearing this bill today. I am Brittany Miller, representing Assembly District 5. I'm here today to present Assembly Bill 465, which revises provisions relating to education. Harassment in education settings, whether in the K-12 schools or in institutions of higher learning, undermines the safety, well-being, and success of students, educators, and staff alike. In Nevada, recent incidents and growing public concern have highlighted the urgent need for clear policies and accountability measures to prevent harassment and protect individuals from retaliation when they come forward with their experiences. Studies have consistently shown that a hostile work environment or educational environment not only disrupts learning, but can also lead to long-term negative effects, including increased dropout rates, diminished mental health, and lasting impacts on career prospects. As I tell my students, my number one priority above anything else, including their grades, scores, and even their learning, is first and foremost their safety, both physical and emotional safety, especially knowing that in some instances, school is the only safe place for many of our students. So here I am again bringing another bill, just like my racial bullying bill a few sessions ago, to make our schools safer, both physically and emotionally. And while many want to believe narrative over facts when it comes to what's actually going on in our school, I promise you these traumatic events do occur. Not all the time, not every day, not even in every building. But when they do, they can be emotionally damaging for the victim and impact everyone in that school community. Remember, whatever happens in that classroom, that hallway, that building, or that campus, it just isn't about the specific individuals involved, but it actually changes the culture for everyone in that community. This bill seeks to address some of those gaps experienced when dealing or addressing such instances. And whether the incident is student to student, staff to staff, or, as many people don't want to recognize, student to staff, we can do better for everyone. With that, I have my co-presenters, and I will allow my co-presenters to introduce themselves. We do have senior counsel from the National Women's Law Center, Elizabeth Tang. She should be on Zoom from DC. And so with that, Chair, I will turn it over to Serena Evans.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. With your permission, I would actually like to hand it over to my colleague, Riley Svensson, to kick it off.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Riley Svensson, RYLEYSVENDSEN, and I am the Policy Specialist with the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to present AB 465, the Students' Access to Freedom and Educational Rights Act, or as we're calling it, the Nevada SAFER Act. The introduction of the SAFER Act has been a long time in the making and builds on the work that NCE-DSV has done in previous legislative sessions to protect student survivors and increase support services. We are honored to be bringing this bill forward in partnership with the National Women's Law Center, who first championed the SAFER Act at the federal level in 2022. While we have made progress in Nevada, harassment and assault remain rampant in Nevada's schools, affecting students, staff, and educators of all backgrounds. Across Nevada, students and staff face unacceptable levels of harassment, including sexual, racial, disability-based, religious, and anti-LGBTQ+ harassment. In fact, statistics show that 21% of girls aged 14 to 18 have experienced non-consensual kissing and touching. Nationwide, 10% of K through 12 students will face sexual misconduct by a school employee before graduation, and 83% of LGBTQ+ students report harassment based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Disabled students are also at a heightened risk, being 2 to 3 times more likely to experience harassment compared to their peers. Despite these staggering figures, many victims report being ignored or punished when they seek help. This failure to protect students leads to long-term consequences, including diminished academic performance, increased dropout rates, and lasting emotional trauma. 34% of sexual assault survivors in college are forced to drop out due to the ongoing harm that they face. This unfortunate truth is that current federal and state laws fail to adequately address harassment and assault in educational settings. As it stands, Nevada's anti-harassment laws impose stringent and often unrealistic requirements for victims to receive support. For example, students must prove that the harassment was severe or pervasive, an unreasonable standard that fails to account for the trauma caused by even a single incident. Furthermore, Nevada's laws lack clear and consistent rules about when schools must intervene, and there is no requirement to address all forms of harassment that occur off campus or online. That is why the Nevada SAFER Act is so necessary. Chair, with your permission, I would like to now hand it over to Elizabeth Tang to discuss the bill in further detail.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Tang. I'm a senior counsel for education and workplace justice at the National Women's Law Center. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present on the
Thank you.
Nevada
Ms.
SAFER
Tang,
Act.
could you please spell your name for the record as well? Thank you.
Yes. Elizabeth. Last name T for Tango, A, N for November, G for Golf.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you for this opportunity to present on the Nevada SAFER Act. I want to take a few minutes to share some of the many gaps that we have unfortunately identified in both federal law and in Nevada law that are currently failing harassment victims in schools, and describe how the SAFER Act will close these gaps. So these are just a few examples. First, the SAFER Act will remove harsh proof requirements. As my colleague Riley mentioned earlier, under Nevada law, harassment victims in higher education must prove that the harassment they suffered was severe or pervasive in order to receive help. At the federal level, the litigation standards are actually even worse. Victims of all ages must prove that the harassment was both severe and pervasive, so not or, but and. And this is the problem. Many courts have held that common sense forms of harassment, like forced kissing, groping, are not severe, or that oral rape or vaginal rape are not pervasive unless they happen more than once. Otherwise, the school doesn't have to do anything about it. And I know you'll all agree that that's outrageous. The SAFER Act will fix this by using a common sense standard that reflects our real life understanding of harassment, by requiring Nevada schools to respond to sex, race, disability, religious, and other forms of harassment if it negatively affects a victim's ability to participate in or benefit from school. As a second example, the SAFER Act will close the off-campus loophole. Many federal courts have held that schools do not need to address harassment, even if the victim has to sit next to their rapist or their abuser at school every day, or even if the harasser is their teacher or their professor, just because the harassment itself happened off campus or online. And similarly, in Nevada, with a few exceptions, the state also does not require its schools to address any online or off-campus harassment. And so the SAFER Act will fix this by requiring Nevada schools to address off-campus and online harassment when it negatively affects a victim's ability to participate in school, including by offering much-needed supportive measures to the victim. And again, this is a common sense standard that reflects how students and school staff interact with their classmates and coworkers in our shared community and in our increasingly online world. Third, the SAFER Act will hold schools accountable. Right now, federal courts use a very lax standard called the deliberate indifference standard for harassment in schools. This means schools can really mistreat harassment victims without being held accountable. And I've personally seen this, numerous schools suspending and even expelling rape victims instead of helping them, including my own clients. Another example, there was a school district that allowed 3 Black sisters to be racially harassed for more than a decade, including being called the N-word and finding a noose next to their car. And the two younger sisters actually had to transfer to another school district because they were so unsafe there. But a federal court shockingly said that the school was nevertheless not deliberately indifferent and therefore could not be held accountable at all. So these examples really beg the question of when a school could ever be held liable in federal court under this deliberate indifference standard. Similarly, here in Nevada, with a few exceptions, schools are not required to take any specific actions to address harassment, whether in K-12 or in higher education. The SAFER Act will fix this by requiring all Nevada schools to develop, implement, and enforce a comprehensive harassment policy that includes investigation procedures, supportive measures, and other necessary actions to stop harassment and prevent it from reoccurring. This is a common sense standard that all schools should be able to meet, and the SAFER Act will ensure that Nevada students and school staff can at least seek justice in the Nevada courts if necessary, even if the federal law is not on their side. And I will also note that this accountability standard is very similar to federal employment law, which means the SAFER Act will also ensure that children and young adults in Nevada schools are given the same protections that all employees, including school employees, already enjoy under federal employment law. So these are just three of the many ways that SAFER Act will protect harassment victims. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Serena Evans.
Thank you so much, Chair. Serena Evans, for the record, SERENAEVANS. I'm the Policy Director for the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. I also have the pleasure of serving as the Chair for the K-12 Committee on Responses to Power-Based Violence in Schools, which was formed out of AB 245 from last session, which was championed by the Chair of this incredible committee. I just want to note what an honor it is to be presenting such a critical bill on the first day of April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I think my co-presenters have covered this very succinctly, that this bill is a critical piece of legislation that will allow Nevada students and school staff to thrive. The bill that's before you today is the product of many months of community collaboration and partnerships, and incorporates much of the feedback from a large group of amazing community partners serving marginalized and diverse communities in every corner of this state. Unfortunately, in my time at the Coalition, I have heard countless stories of students and their families of how schools and institutions have failed survivors and left them to navigate these complex systems on their own. And each story shared really highlighted how deeply students are impacted by harassment and how these experiences shaped their lives. Additionally, in my time serving as the chair on the Committee on Responses to Power-Based Violence, I have heard from staff across the state and every level that they often don't know what to do and don't have clear procedures to follow when disclosures of harassment are brought forward. This bill addresses both of those issues. It provides victim-centered supportive measures and protections, and it gives schools clear guidelines and procedures to follow so that everyone knows what to do when this happens. I do want to note that this bill incorporates the recommendations from the Committee on Responses to Power-Based Violence in Schools by having confidential employees available to students and staff, and that staff confidential employee has to go through regular victim trauma-informed training, and because of that, the committee is pleased to support this legislation. I will now briefly walk you through the bill, inclusive of the conceptual amendment, as succinctly and swiftly as I can. So sections 3 through 13 define certain terms in the bill relating to K-12 schools and school districts. Sections 20 through 26 define certain terms in a similar manner for higher education measures or higher education institutions. Section 14 holds a school district or charter school civilly liable for harassment occurring in connection with their educational programs. Section 15 defines what constitutes a school district receiving notice of harassment. Section 16 provides an affirmative defense for school districts against civil liability for harassment. Sections 27 through 29 describe similar provisions for institutions at the Nevada System of Higher Education. Section 17 and Section 30 require each school district or NSHE, respectively, to designate at least one employee as a confidential employee who serves as a safe point or contact for individuals disclosing harassment. Additionally, Section 16 mandates that K-12 and Section 30 authorizes that NSHE, upon receiving notice of harassment, the Civil Rights Coordinator promptly notifies the complainant about the resources and supportive measures available to them. Section 18 sets forth protections to ensure that individuals who report harassment are not subjected to retaliatory or discriminatory practices and prohibits several punitive practices. Sections 30 and 40 describe similar provisions to those in Section 18 that the Board of Regents may authorize NSHE institutions to adopt. Section 31 is clarifying language. Section 22 defines harassment to be inclusive of power-based violence. Sections 36 to 39 will be amended out. That is not our intent to impact or stall the incredible work happening on the Power-Based Violence Committee in NSHE. And then Sections 32 through 35 define certain terms. And lastly, Section 41 provides that the Board of Regents may adopt regulations for the provisions outlined in the bill. I know that was a super quick speed through, and I think we stand for any questions at this point.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Assemblymember Luber-Hodge.
Thank you, Chair, so much, and thank you for bringing this bill. You know, as a teacher, I have seen exactly what you are describing. I have been at a school where 10 different women reported a male teacher for the harassment that he was targeting at them, and he remained employed at that school with no consequences. I have seen staff report groping and sexual harassment, and nothing was done. I have worked for a principal that said she was trying to push out teachers of a certain race at her school, and nothing was done. And so I really appreciate the efforts here, and I'm wondering, in those cases where these things were reported, if nothing is done under this bill, how would those situations play out differently?
Thank you for that, Assembly Member. The question is always about if nothing's done. I think that anytime any of us have been victimized, or anytime a child's been victimized, you know, they run home, they tell their parents, and the first thing you say is, did you tell someone? Did you tell a teacher? Did you tell someone? With this, when you heard about the affirmative defense and what we're expecting and requiring of the schools and higher education is for an actual policy to be created that has a specific protocol in there of which steps to follow. And in that protocol should be, because again, no one can dictate or predict who someone's going to report to, right? Sometimes we may tell another colleague that's not officially reporting. But we know in schools we have many protocols, right? Bullying protocols. If a student is at risk of suicidal ideology or tendencies, you know, there's certain protocols that go into place, or as mandated reporters, certain things that we need to do. So in that protocol, it will be required from that confidential employee the actual steps that they need to follow. And again, we don't want to prescribe it because it's different for every community, but for each district or charter school consortium or different college or university, if those protocols are followed, and again, in the bills and the amendment, it talks about some things to include in those protocols, then the liability is not on the institution. You know, I used the example in a meeting just a little bit ago about as a mandated reporter, I'm reported to call CPS under certain instances. Sometimes that CPS, their investigation doesn't follow through or doesn't result in something that we may have imagined it should. In those cases, the liability is not on the teacher or the school or the staff member because we did what was expected of us. And so I think that would be an example of how this bill, again, back to your original question of how would it play out differently, how it would play out differently is there would be steps to follow. I imagine in the school district, before the suicide protocols, before the bullying protocols, the same thing. There was inconsistency in how certain things were handled. And this would, again, bring that consistency and that clarity and that expectation of, regardless of personal opinion or personal experience. We all know that often when we're victims of harassment, there are people who try to minimize or dismiss those behaviors. But regardless, these are the steps that you will follow.
Members, additional questions? I'll go ahead and ask. Can you explain? I'm sorry. This is there's a lot of amendments to this piece of legislation, and obviously we received a number of amendments. So I'm a little bit confused because I looked at over 3 different amendments for this piece of legislation before today's hearing. And so I'm just trying to understand, can you just walk me through very basically, like, what does this bill actually do? And I don't want the section by section breakdown. I just want, like, in practicality, these are the changes that we are making, and this is what's happening now, and this is what this bill does.
Absolutely. Serena Evans for the record, and I apologize for the multiple amendments, and so I'm happy to clear that up for you. So the overall intent of this bill is to ensure that students and staff who experience harassment can receive the supportive measures they need to have an equitable access to education. So the biggest changes are putting in policies and procedures that when a disclosure of harassment happens, there are clear policies and procedures for that student or staff to follow. They know that they are go to the confidential employee. That confidential employee walks them through what their rights are as a student or staff survivor, what supportive measures can be offered to them, and it is then upon the schools to act with swift diligence to make sure that that student or employee is kept safe, that they're able to maintain in that educational program, that they're offered these supportive measures. It is not required that students or staff take up these supportive measures. And then the intent of the bill is to hold schools civilly liable. So if they do not develop this policy and procedure, if they do not provide this information and offer these supportive measures to student survivors, students and staff could then seek civil litigation against the school districts or the institutions.
Thank you. And so I want to go ahead and go to section 17 of the bill on page 7. It does state that there would be a confidential employee for the school district. So obviously that might be practicable in smaller districts, but that doesn't make sense necessarily to me that there would be only one, that there has to be a confidential employee for like Clark or Washoe. Can you explain what that would look like?
Yes, absolutely. That language has been amended. Originally, it was a confidential employee for each building, which is quite excessive. So we right now have settled on for our larger school districts like Clark and Washoe. The term we use in Clark, I'm not sure of the term in Washoe, is basically per zone. So there would be a confidential employee per zone. Per higher ed, it could be per campus. And for charter schools, it could be per like consortium underneath a specific management company.
Thank you. And then, building off of that, I understand that, their responsibilities are to create these supportive measures. Like what, I guess, as somebody who's supervised teachers for a number of years now, while there are actual issues with harassment sometimes that occur, and I do believe many school leaders try to make the ramifications necessary to like address those issues on campus. My concern would be that like you have an educator that take something as harassment that isn't, right? And so what is there in here to address those situations so that school leaders can still make the decisions that they need, so that like if a teacher is really not able to teach, then perhaps that's not the place. But I just don't think it would be fair, especially in certain schools. You will have teachers that say like those students and that student and every behavior problem is a student who is harassing me. And so how do we like address that, and how does this bill like address that?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. And this is Brittany Miller for the record. I think we forgot that key part. With that, first of all, it would have to fall under the actual definition of harassment. So harassment would especially not include just poor or negative behavior upon a student. And also, I want to keep in mind that this is for all staff in the school building, so it's not just pertaining to teachers. Also, there are certain HR requirements that are already in place that require certain actions when it comes to staff. But the key piece around here, I would say, is about no retaliation for staff if they do come forward with a claim. And again, even if the claim isn't to be substantiated, again, it does address that. The other thing is that with these protective or supportive measures, that there's more things about things that we've seen that don't always happen for staff when something happens. I know that in Clark, there was a very heinous act that happened that's well past harassment that we're all aware of. And one of the hardest things for many of us after the fact, once we learned of the crime that happened, was that that teacher was new and didn't even have enough accrued sick time or leave time to take off. And so that was really something hurtful, because right away, every teacher I knew was like, she can have my sick time. I'll give her my sick time. Everyone just readily. But we weren't able to do that. So in the bill, it talks about even enabling to make sure that staff, if they need certain time off or certain other things like transfers or whatever, can be put in without being punished. But again, it's not just for someone to come and say, someone's harassing me just because. I'm going to add to that.
Serena Evans for the record. I believe Elizabeth Tang with the National Women's Law Center might be able to address this a little bit more eloquently than I. Elizabeth?
Sure, Elizabeth Tang for the record. I gave some examples in my earlier remarks about gaps in the current law showing that harassment victims actually have a really hard time proving that the abuse that they faced is considered harassment. And so, from my experience, what I've seen talking to students and staff across the country, including in Nevada, many times what they're being told is what you experienced is not considered harassment at all. So it's really the opposite problem. I talked about how, they have to show that the abuse they faced was severe or pervasive enough. They have to show that their school was mistreating them enough, that it was deliberately indifferent behavior, and that they feel unsafe enough at school after a classmate or a coworker or a teacher or student harasses or assaults them off campus or online. But there are some other gaps too that I didn't have time for in my remarks. There are federal courts that currently allow schools to ignore harassment unless an appropriate person has actual notice of it. And Nevada law is actually silent on this issue. When a school is considered to have notice of harassment, Nevada code doesn't address this. So unfortunately, different courts have held in many different cases, numerous cases, that people like professors, teachers, coaches, counselors, security guards, principals, even superintendents were not the right person to report harassment to. And so even when the harassment victim told, that long list of people that I told you that I just listed right now, they were told, well, you didn't tell the right person. Those people didn't count. And so, the harassment you experienced still isn't actionable. It's okay that the school didn't do anything. And so the SAFER Act will fix this by setting a very clear standard requiring Nevada schools to act if a school employee, a contractor, a school board member, somebody who has that position of authority knew or reasonably should have known about the harassment. And there's actually something even more shocking too. There are quite a few courts that have said that institutions of higher education can completely ignore student-on-student harassment or assault unless the victim is harassed or assaulted again after the school knew about the first incident. So we, as advocates, call this the one free rape rule because it's horrendous, and it already applies in 4 states. A federal appellate court has suggested it applies to 7 more states. And so in other words, this one free rape rule is really spreading across the country. But what the SAFER Act does is it proactively states that, at least here in Nevada, schools have to address harassment or assault or abuse the first time they know about it and not wait for a victim to be raped or abused again before the school responds. And so, from my experience, talking to students and school staff, doing hundreds of intakes, it's really clear that the law's understanding of what harassment is and how it's defined hasn't really caught up at all to what we as very ordinary and reasonable people, I'm speaking like without my lawyer hat on, right? But we as reasonable people consider to be unacceptable behavior in schools, in our workplaces, in our communities. So harassment really is not really adequately recognized under our current laws. And, I'm very proud to say that the SAFER Act will fix that.
Thank you. And I guess some of the challenges that I would like to see worked on is right now I don't see a burden of proof for what that should look like to prove that an incident has been, was an incident of harassment. And I also don't see any anything in place, and correct me if I'm wrong, to who determines that, but then also if an employee were to disagree with the determination, what does that look like? It just says within 3 business days. But if somebody states this is an incident of harassment and then the district says no, then what does that look like? And I don't think that's adequately addressed. I'll go ahead and pass it off right now to Assemblymember Orlicker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill. My question is about Section 6.1 on the definition of harassment. And I noticed that it's contingent on a protected characteristic, unlike 6.3, which is not power-based violence. And I'm wondering if somebody, a student, is subject to an intimidating, hostile, or abusive environment, do we need to require them to prove it was because of a protected characteristic, or is it enough that they're in an abusive environment?
Thank you so much for the question. Serena Evans for the record. So harassment, the first part, so section 6, subsection 1 is the protected class. And then you are correct that we did make harassment inclusive of power-based violence, which we did work on last session. AB 245 addresses the definition of power-based violence, which encompasses those situations of harassment and violence that are outside of a protected class. And so I think that this definition broadly covers the student and staff experience of experiencing, hostile and abusive environments in their educational settings.
Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember DeLong.
Just want to follow up on that response there. So does that mean, excuse me, does that mean if someone's not in a protected class, they can be harassed?
Serena Evans for the record, excuse me. That is correct. Yes, someone that is not in a protected class can be harassed. Absolutely.
Members, any additional questions?
Well, Elizabeth Tang for the record, too. Harassment specifically, legally defined, it requires a protected class for the conduct to be considered harassment. But there are lots of behaviors that can still create a hostile and an offensive and intimidating environment that may not be based on a protected class. And I believe that Nevada's bullying laws already address those situations. So I wanted to make that clear, too. We're not saying that you can still create a hostile environment for people without any consequences or repercussions. It's just that harassment legally as a term of art does require that the protected class.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? I don't. Assemblymember Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry. I think I'm confused on this last little discussion we just had. Definition of harassment, the question that my colleague, Assemblymember Ornlichter asked, the definition in NRS, if you could say it again, only protected classes? And would you elaborate those for us real quick?
I would say, Brittany Miller for the record, I would say I appreciate the challenge, how it seems misleading in the way that the bill is currently written. That is not the intent. So if language needs to be tightened, of course, because we know that, yes, there's harassment that's the result of being in a protected class or a power differential, right? We know that harassment also can happen between two individuals of all the same exact demographics, right? And that still creates a hostile work environment. That person still feels attacked. It is still consistent. It is still targeted. And as we mentioned, the bullying laws, often when we're talking about the youth, it is bullying, right? Because with the youth, it's not necessarily a power differential between two kids, the same age, the same gender, the same everything. At that school. Often as adults, we refer to harassment laws. And again, it can be often because there is a power differential. But sometimes that bullying happens between adults as well, creating that hostile work environment. So the intention is not to leave out anyone who's been victimized of a targeted and consistent attempts to demoralize, attack, or in any way make someone feel inferior or vulnerable or at risk. So I appreciate where the confusion as it's currently stated is.
Thank you for validating my confusion. So is that something we can get further clarified in language?
Yes.
Maybe to just tie in bullying, all these different aspects that seems to be residing in different definitions in different statute areas. Is there something maybe to express your intent better?
Yes, we're still, Brittany Miller for the record, we're still working on some amendments, just like there's still some areas we need to clarify and specify differently for higher ed compared to K through 12. Because again, these are different environments. Now you may be living near or with the person. It's not just a classroom setting anymore. So there are some areas, but yes, that is a good note of something that needs to be clarified. I will speak just anecdotally and personally. It's challenging with these terms because as adults, because I know it's not just teachers or staff, sometimes it's adults, right? A kid is victimized or perceives they're victimized in some way. And they right away say, oh, I was bullied. And sometimes it's not bullying, right? If someone just comes up and kicks you on the playground or steals your ball, it's a one specific instance that, yes, there was harm, yes, you were offended, yes, you were hurt, but that's not necessarily the definition of bullying. And the same with adults, right? It's not always necessarily the definition of harassment. So I appreciate that there's some areas where it needs to be cleaned up. Now, of course, that's where other crimes cross. Again, a sexual advance is quite different than, an actual assault or rape. Sometimes one time there are clear laws for things that occur on one time, but yes, we will clarify that so that, because of course no one should be victimized or felt that this is a hostile environment.
Members, any additional questions? I don't see any additional questions at this time. Thank you for your presentation. And at this time, as we've been doing in past hearings, we'll go ahead and do 20 minutes support, 20 minutes opposition, 20 minutes neutral if it exists. At this time, I'll invite anyone wishing to testify in support. Please make sure you state and spell your name for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dawn Echeverry, ETCHEVERRY, President of the Nevada State Education Association. We work to build school communities with cultures of respect and inclusion, where students and staff are free from all forms of harassment. We support the SAFER Act, AB 465, to close the gap in school anti-harassment laws. Harassment in schools can negatively impact students, educators, and overall learning environment. When students feel unsafe, it makes it difficult to engage in learning and participate in school activities. Meanwhile, harassment of educators on the job can lead to anxiety and burnout, poor job performance, and ultimately leaving the profession. In addition to the Pass the Plan campaign to reach optimal funding of public education, NSCA supports AB 465 to create a safer and more respectful school communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sophia, S-O-P-H-I-A, Comis, C-O-M-I-S, and I'm here as a survivor. I was raped my freshman year of high school. I didn't report it because I was scared, ashamed, and unsure of how anyone would respond. But other students knew what happened and they reported it. The school knew, and yet for days nothing happened. No one checked in on me, no one asked if I was safe, no one offered support or even acknowledged what I had just endured. I walked through the same hallways as my rapist and had to attend class like everything was normal, while inside I was crumbling. And the worst part is, the adults in that building, the ones trained to protect students, did nothing. When they finally responded, it wasn't with care or understanding. It wasn't with compassion. I was forced to tell a vice principal I had never met that I was raped, while she ate her lunch and complained about being hungry, like my trauma was an inconvenience to her meal. And then I was made to repeat every detail again to a male police officer I didn't know, like I was nothing more than a case to process. And then, without any warning or preparation, they made me call my mom and repeat it to her too, on speakerphone, in front of them. That experience was one of the most traumatizing moments of my life. I was a victim of not only assault, but also the way the school handled it. Like I was just a problem to fix or paperwork to file. I wasn't treated like a student in crisis. I wasn't treated like someone who had just been deeply hurt. I was treated like a burden. This is why school accountability matters, because when schools mishandle cases of power-based violence, they don't fail, they actively cause more harm. And that harm stays with survivors. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we trust others, and whether we ever feel safe again. I am asking this committee to understand something very simple, but very urgent. Schools have a legal and moral responsibility to protect their students, and when they fail, there must be consequences. Schools should not be allowed to bury these situations under red tape to protect reputation over students or to claim ignorance when the damage is done. Too many counselors, administrators, and staff members have no idea how to handle trauma. If they're going to be the first line of response, they need proper, mandatory training in trauma-informed care, crisis response, and power-based violence. Survivors deserve better than blank stares, invasive questioning, or forced retellings. They deserve dignity. They deserve a system that believes them, supports them, and helps them heal. You can't undo what happened to me, but you can make sure it doesn't happen to the next student. You can hold schools accountable, you can demand education and change, and you can choose to listen to survivors, not just with your ears, but with action. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're the first person I've ever let go over time, but thank you so much for coming to share your story, and I understand you're a member of the Commission on School-Based, Power-Based Violence for K through 12, so thank you so much for your service and using that experience to advocate for other students. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Reagan Comas here today, just speaking in my personal capacity as well as the Vice Chair of the Committee on Responses to Power-Based Violence in Schools. During our meetings, I heard three themes that came out of those. First, I've heard that there are no changes necessary from the Title IX coordinators, as they claim that they contact every victim of sexual assault that is reported within their district. I can tell you that that is not accurate. We were never contacted. We were never offered any support or any services. The school never even called to ask how she was doing after the report. Second, I heard social workers, counselors, and principals acknowledge that they lack the very training to properly handle these situations. While bullying is a very serious issue, and this body and the districts have taken great strides in addressing these incidents, power-based violence is different, and it requires a different type of response. Yet none of this has been done by the groups to acknowledge this gap. Third, I heard incidents of power-based violence are unfortunately happening statewide. These are not incidents happening in a vacuum or to a nominal number of students. 6 months following the incident, I met with the superintendent of our district and shared our experience. She expressed her great concern and told me that there had been an investigation and she would be following up with me to provide the outcome and the changes that the district would be making so this does not happen again. It's been over 2 years. I'm still waiting. I'm very proud of my daughter and everything that she has overcome. While you can see her strength here today, what you did not see is the tears. What you did not see is the anxiety attacks at her new school every time she had to get called down to the school's office or speak with the teacher. This is trauma that was not caused by the assault. This was caused by her school. That is why this legislation is so critical. It holds school districts accountable and provides them with the tools and training they need to support and protect children and staff. Sadly, my family is not alone in our experience, and while we cannot undo what was done to us, I do not want another family to endure this additional trauma due to the failures of those in positions of authority within our school. I still have time. Sorry, I'm trying to hurry.
No, you're past time.
I am.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cummins.
They could have taken my time. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Lindsay Knox, KNOX, here in my most important role, and that is as a parent. In a 3-month period, my 11-year-old daughter has reported 2 instances of sexual harassment by the same student. After the first incident, the teacher did nothing, leading her to go straight to the principal's office. There was no investigation, even though she filed the report, no consequences to her classmate, no plan to keep her safe, or any communication with me and her mother. After the second incident, still no teacher stepped in. We were treated as an inconvenience by both the principal, where we were blown off when requesting a meeting, and also faced a horrible meeting with the Title IX coordinator where she spoke down to us as if our child was not important, we were inconveniencing her, and she was there to check a box. We understood that there was 3 options: remove her from the school, file a Title IX complaint, which based off of our meeting with the Title IX coordinator, we knew would go nowhere, or go the legal route. As all of you know, I work for a law firm. I know how the legal route works, and we were not willing to do that to our daughter. So this was a very eye-opening experience on the lack of accountability within the principal, the Title IX coordinator, and the school district itself. And we very much look forward to the passage of this bill, as we believe not only will it protect our students, it will also give the parents the route necessary to keep their kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming to share your stories.
Hello, my name is Carissa Pierce, CarSsaPearce, and I'm here within my personal capacity to share a story about my family and how the school system has failed my 13-year-old godsister. I am reading parts of a story on behalf of Chloe Jonas, ChloeJonas, the mom of the 13-year-old, and have submitted her full story to be included as an exhibit. Sad, small, worthless, unimportant, embarrassed, exposed. These are the words my daughter used to describe herself following the events on March 6th, 2025. The weeks leading up to that day included numerous incidents where Amelia, name changed, made time in her day to cuss out and threaten my daughter in the hallways and classrooms of Shaw Middle School. On Thursday, March 6th, Amelia posted a photo on social media containing an image of my daughter crying in the hallway following one of Amelia's verbal assaults, with threatening text written on the image. The image was shared to social media and caused immediate, ongoing emotional harm. That harm was and continues to be more damaging than the threat of physical harm. Later that day, another student, Amy, name changed, airdropped an image to students and teachers alike that was a private photo taken at a sleepover by Amy of my daughter, scantily clothed in pajamas, consisting of short cotton shorts and a sports bra. Amy did not have permission to share the photo, and my daughter did not intend for anyone else's eyes to see it. My daughter was in class at the time, and she asked the teacher if she could go report this. The teacher told her no. Multiple times that day, in response to these incidents, I arrived at the school after hearing from my 13-year-old daughter, not from a school administrator. I met with the dean of students, who stated the school's hands were tied by the policies that he frantically flipped through to make sure that his response was by the book. The book needs a rewrite. The school failed to make school a safe place for my daughter, and the school continues to fail daily while my daughter faces retaliation and social crucifixion from students she's never met. The continued harassment is a direct result of failures of the policies and people.
Thank you for your testimony. I know that you submitted those full remarks, though, so just so members of the committee know. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Jessica Munger, M-U-N-G-E-R, Program Manager for Silver State Equality, Nevada's statewide LGBTQ+ civil rights organization. We're in strong support of AB 465. This legislation was meticulously crafted to support students and staff, and we're very grateful for the work. Harassment in schools is rampant and often leaves student survivors without the necessary resources to feel safe and supported in their schools. In 2023, our LGBTQ+ Student Advisory Council conducted a statewide survey of LGBTQ+ middle and high school students in Nevada about their school experience. We spoke to students all over the state. Among other alarming things, we learned that nearly 40%, 39.7% of students surveyed in our state felt unsafe at school. Not just uncomfortable or bummed or irritated about being there, but unsafe. And in general, LGBTQ+ students are bullied at twice the rate of heterosexual students, and transgender students are bullied at 3 times the rate of their cisgender peers. According to the Trevor Project, 39% of LGBTQ+ young people report sexual violence. I know so many LGBTQ+ students who have dropped out of school due to harassment and assault. It is very common. AB 465, the SAFER Act, gives students a better chance of finishing their education, which we all know is the starting point for the amazing things they'll do from there. Thank you so much for your consideration of this important legislation that will impact students and their access to education.
Thank you. At this time, I don't see anybody else here in Carson City. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of AB 465? Seeing none, I see some people, but I don't see them approaching. ABH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support of AB 465?
Thank you, Chair. To provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 465, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Again, to provide testimony in support of AB 465, please press star 9 now.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Kennedy Taylor, KENNEDYTAYLOR for the record. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for the Associated Students of the University of Nevada, representing the undergraduate student body since 1898. Today, I'm here to express our strong support for AB 465, authorizing the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada to prohibit certain actions by an institution within the system relating to harassment. According to the 2023 ASUN Issues and Priority Needs Assessment, safety and security is a top 5 concern for students on campus, one of the main pillars being sexual assault prevention and response on campus, and another being Title IX policies and procedures. AB 465 addresses harassment within higher education by making institutions civically liable when harassment occurs. Harassment within educational settings creates a toxic environment that significantly undermines students' academic performance, mental health, and overall well-being. The constant stress and fear associated with harassment can lead to decreased motivation to continually show up to class and a decline in academic achievement. AB 465 continues to further protect victims of harassment and enforce accountability within our institutions. I urge the committee to move Nevada forward through passing AB 465 and protect our victims of power-based violence and harassment. This legislation is essential to create a comprehensive support system ensuring safety and equitable opportunity for all students and employees in our educational spaces. Thank you, and go Pack.
My name is and our
Caller, we can't hear you. Would you be able to start your testimony over again? Caller, we can't hear you.
It appears this caller has disconnected. I'll go ahead and move forward to the next one.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Stephen Cohen for the record. Stephen with a B. Cohen as in the now former Assemblywoman. I'm the alleged liaison for the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. Society must ensure that people with disabilities have the fundamental right to medical and psychological treatment, which protects them against all exploitation and treatment which is of a discriminatory, abusive, or degrading nature. The right to access care without fear of denial is essential, and the right to respect and dignity is critical. Further, it is our supportive position that school districts, medical personnel, including without limitation first responders, and other trusted members interacting with the disability community promote the sharing of accurate information about sexuality, sexual health, sexual choices, including without limitation orientation, and other various sexual health topics, promoting safe and consensual sexual health and to provide supportive and well-informed care. Further, training must be implemented, educating on safe behaviors and relationships, both sexual and non-sexual, for all K-12 students, and policies which are welcome and inclusive of all sexualities and relationship types. By discouraging the use of positions of power, controlling or manipulative of relationships, including without limitation guardianships, the negative influences on a person's desires, identity, orientation, or other relationships is removed. Thank you for your support of this important measure.
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move towards opposition testimony. Is anybody here in Carson City testifying in opposition?
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Prutzman, Judy Prutzman. I am the Director of Civil Rights Compliance for Washoe County School District. And Washoe County School District, first I want to say, is committed to providing safe and respectful environments free of harassment and discrimination based on protected class status within its schools, buses, and other facilities and all district-sponsored events. Our district board policy 9200 prohibits harassment and discrimination based on protected class status, prohibits retaliation, and requires the creation of a civil rights compliance department to coordinate compliance efforts concerning harassment and discrimination. AB 465 would create new definitions of harassment and sexual harassment that conflict with current state and federal laws that already prohibit harassing conduct in our schools. As the district's Director of Civil Rights Compliance, I'm concerned that certain terms within these new definitions will create confusion when applied in the K-12 setting. For example, how do we accurately identify conduct of a sexual nature between 6-year-old students who may lack the capacity to seek sexual gratification? AB 465 seeks to close a perceived gap in anti-harassment laws that apply to school districts under the premise that school districts do not address harassment. However, that gap does not exist in the K-12 setting, and Washoe County School District does address harassment. All school districts must comply with the Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972, which prohibits sex-based harassment in our schools, and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits race-based harassment in our schools. Under these federal laws, school districts must promptly take steps to prevent reported harassment and remedy the effects of the harassment by offering supportive measures to the victim. In almost every instance where sex or race-based misconduct does not meet the definition of harassment under federal law, the harassing conduct is considered bullying or discrimination based on race.
Thank you. If you could start to conclude your remarks. I know I gave some other speakers some additional time, so if you need to wrap up, that's fine.
Okay. I just want to remind this committee that Nevada has a very broad definition of bullying that explicitly applies to any conduct that creates an intimidating or hostile educational environment. And it is our position that this statute would just complicate what districts are already doing.
Good afternoon, Sarah Montalvo, SARA, MONTALVO, and I am the Deputy Chief General Counsel for the Washoe County School District. I do want to echo that providing a safe and respectful learning environment is a critically important work for our schools. However, we do not see that this bill accomplishes that goal. Instead, it results in confusion and a large increase in liability and exposure upon school districts over circumstances beyond their control. For example, Section 14 creates a private right of action and places liability against school districts for conduct that does not occur within a school setting, and liability for conduct by individuals not employed or controlled by school districts, while also expanding the definitions of harassment or sexual harassment that have been previously developed over the past several decades to properly guide school districts. This will only serve to create confusion, and we've actually seen that here with very smart individuals about what exactly are we navigating here with these definitions. It also will require schools to spend significant funds and resources defending against claims that schools have no control over. For example, based on this language, school districts could be liable if one of its students is harassed over the weekend by a non-district employee at a place not controlled by a school district or a non-school district sponsored event. Well, such as a movie theater, a theater, a plane, a museum, or even in a completely different state, this is holding school districts accountable for that conduct. Finally, while the bill does fortunately provide for immunity for school districts within as long as certain conditions are met, this unfortunately does not prevent litigation against districts, and instead we're going to be required to spend significant resources defending against itself to establish that we have met these conditions. And some of these conditions are unclear and, again, difficult to control because some require parent consent of both the victim and the offenders. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski here, speaking on behalf of the Superintendents, Nevada Association of School Superintendents. You've heard the concerns of Washoe County, and those are reflected by other superintendents around the state. We have in NRS 388.135 bullying, cyberbullying definitions, and there are several pieces of legislation, several pieces of Nevada law that outline what schools must do. And schools have to, once there's reporting, there's investigation, and there's follow-up with the victims. So we feel that this issue has been talked about for many sessions, and laws have been put in place, and we are opposed to this bill because we think it's already there, it's already in law, and our people are forced to investigate and follow up with the victims. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I don't see anybody else here in Carson City. So I'll go ahead and go to Las Vegas. If there's anybody else in Carson, feel free to approach now. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Linda, Lynda King, King. I'm the Senior Associate General Counsel for the Nevada System of Higher Education and a member of the Board of Regents Task Force on Power-Based Violence at Institutions of Higher Education. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. And she is extremely grateful for the portions of today's amendment to AB 465, which remove revisions to the ongoing work of the task force. However, in accordance with the committee rules, and she must testify in opposition given some remaining concerns. Along with the expansion of the definition of sexual harassment, and she is very concerned with the new definition and standard for harassment, calling for expansive, unprecedented civil liability, making institutions civilly liable for the conduct of third parties not within their control, regardless of where the conduct occurs. These provisions are broader in the scope of conduct and liability than similar state anti-discrimination and harassment provisions or their federal corollaries. Further, it is unclear if and how the limitations on liability found in NRS Chapter 40 would apply to an institution's liability for the acts of individuals who are not public officers and employees. This body created the task force to address and remedy the primary concerns AB 465 sponsor and stakeholders have identified as the purpose of this bill: reducing barriers to reporting and the provision of supportive measures for victim survivors. Accordingly, the task force is an appropriate forum for much of what this bill aims to accomplish, and the task force is well suited to determine a range of appropriate supportive measures to ensure that they do not impinge on academic freedom or integrity, and that they avoid conflict with an institution's ability to preserve a student's scholarship, academic, and federal financial aid eligibility. And she continues to review the amendments
Thank
to
you.
the
If
bill
you
that it received today.
if you could start to wrap up your testimony. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're continuing to review the amendments and look forward to our continued collaboration with the sponsor and stakeholders. I'd like to extend an invitation to the task force next meeting to the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic Violence and National Women's Law Center. That meeting is public and open to all on May 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I do not see anybody else in Las Vegas wishing to testify on this piece of legislation. AVH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to AB 465?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 465, please press *9 now to join the queue. Chair, there are no callers to provide testimony at this time.
At this time, we'll go ahead and move to neutral. I do not see anybody here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral, nor do I see anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral. ABH, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. There are no callers to provide testimony at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll go ahead and invite the bill sponsor for any closing remarks.
Thank you again, Chair and committee members. And again, I'll just say that we are willing to work with anyone to clean up or clarify language or concerns in the bill. Also, we appreciate those that did come forward and approach us with their concerns prior so that we could address it. But I think, again, it's just interesting listening to opposition and what we know is going on and what we're told is going on. And again, I know my comfort level changed on how an impression of what I would feel comfortable reporting back to certain places. So with that, I will go ahead and those are the end of my remarks. And thank you so much for your consideration and your time. I know it's been a long afternoon for y'all.
Thank you. At this time, thank you for the presentation. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on AB 465. And at this time, we'll go ahead and move on to the last item of our agenda, which is public comment. Anyone wishing to testify in public comment may approach at this time. You'll have up to 2 minutes to testify in public comment, and I will time you. And please make sure you state and spell your name for the record. Mr. Ippolito, please begin when you're ready.
John Ippolito. To learn about the downside of Infinite Campus, go to protectnevadachildren.org. Nevada may be the only state in the country where every public and public charter school student in the state has way too much subjective, incriminating, and non-educational data stored about them forever in Infinite Campus, i.e. discipline, minor discipline, MTSS, medical counseling, and psychiatric data. We know IC has already been involved in at least 6 data breaches. At protectnevadachildren.org, you can hear WCSD say some vendors have, quote, complete access to everything in Infinite Campus on the students they serve, end quote. WCSD will not tell us what third-party vendors have access to student data stored in IC. We know the largest free EdTech vendor in the world, Edmodo, was sold to the Chinese. When Infinite Campus came to Washoe, we learned that there are no restrictions on who they can sell the entire company to. Do you think the Chinese will try to buy Infinite Campus? If not, private equity firms are buying up EdTech vendors. What about Google or Facebook? We know students have had their admissions to college rescinded because of stuff they've posted online. Experts have said Infinite Campus stores more data on students than anyone ever has in U.S. history. Much of that data IC stores is subjective, non-educational, and incriminating. Two questions no one can really answer. How will simply the existence of the IC database affect the future of Nevada students? 2, who will ultimately have access to all the student data stored in IC, and how will that affect the future of Nevada students? It's time to start deleting the non-educational student data stored in Infinite Campus. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else here in Carson City, and I do not see anybody in Las Vegas. ABH, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public lines are open and working, but we do not have any callers choosing to comment at this time.
All right. At this time, members, is there any discussion? Thank you, members, for enduring a very long committee meeting. I think that was one of our longest yet. We will be meeting again this Thursday. This Thursday, we'll be meeting upon the adjournment of floor, so I expect that to be around 12:30-ish, 12:15-ish. So please keep an eye out for that, and I expect that there will also be a work session this upcoming Thursday as well. We'll make sure that we share that with you all as well. At this time, the committee is adjourned.